All right. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Bearded Gear podcast. This is episode number 9, and I'm actually joined today by Brian Brown of Brian Brown Knives. And this is an exciting one for me because I've just recently gotten my first Brian Brown knife and have been thoroughly enjoying it. So I've got a lot of questions for him as a maker. I've gotten to watch Brian Brown a little bit on his Facebook page, and then you did a live with Jason and Tom in the Millie Club, which I watched part of, although I didn't catch the whole thing. So I feel like I'm getting to know you, but I'm excited to dive in. So Brian, thank you for joining me today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Of course. So you've been making knives now for how long?
5.5, 6 years, roughly.
Okay.
Just from, goofing around with a workmate and hand files up till now.
Awesome. And you've just based on what I can see limited of your shop behind you, you're not necessarily just using little files anymore.
No,
What's your process like now? Are you doing all mill? Are you on a CNC, or how does that shape up for you?
Basically, the only thing that's not done by hand is the water jet of my profiles. So I draw everything in CAD. Pen and pad don't work well for me. I started off pen and paper, and then I decided early on CAD was the way to go for designing. So I do all my designs in CAD, folders, fixed blades, everything. The Yeager-m production started off in a 2D, and then I've since kind of learned 3D stuff. But I'll send the stuff out to WaterJet, and I'll just have the profiles cut. It just saves time,
Oh, for sure.
I could use a bandsaw, but I hate it. You waste time, you waste material. You can get more for your money out of material using a WaterJet. So other than that, it's all done by hand. I don't have anything CNC here. My mill over here it's all manual. I grind all my blades by hand. It's me and me alone. Other than recently, a buddy of mine started helping me doing the bit drivers, which you've got one of those. And
I don't yet. I need to get one.
I thought you had. No, that's somebody else that had one.
You're probably thinking of Left EDC.
Yeah, that's him. Yeah. Oh, I'm getting confused because he was talking about you and yours, and you talked about
that sounds like Kevin.
Yours.
He name drops me every time he gets a chance.
Yeah. I got a little back, but yeah. So anyway, the bit driver, I've got a buddy helping me do those actually, which allows me still all the time to do knife stuff, which is good. So
yeah. So I think it's super commendable that you're doing stuff all by hand. I think that makes the knife in a lot of ways just seem more custom. Like the more handwork that goes into it, I feel like that raises the bar of how custom it is, which is kind of a gray area sometimes in the way people define custom knife these days. But that's really cool. And I don't think WaterJet is cheating at all, because I don't think it's an artistic part of the process to cut out the rough shape of what you're starting with. I imagine it just saves you a ton of effort to not have to do that step,
It does. And being that I do this full time, it's time is money. I mean, I could speed up the process, having more stuff done on CNC and doing big batch work and stuff like that, which there's nothing wrong with. Guys like Oz Machine. He makes an incredible product. He does a lot of stuff, does stuff by hand, but most of it's probably, from what I can tell, is done by CNC, and I've handled some from him, and they're amazing knives. And there's nothing wrong with how he does his process on making those, but I prefer doing them the way I do them. Batch work to me is not fun. I basically, unless I'm doing multiple for one customer, it's typically one knife at a time. That's just
That's awesome.
what I prefer. It's not near as efficient, but having my book orders that I do that I'm working through right now, none of them are really in a row or even close. And I like to kind of go in order. Just it helps me keep everything organized, and I just I see what's ahead. And really, I mean, the way they work, you build them all the same way.
Mhm.
It's just they look different, but the base of it's all identical. You're doing the same
Yeah.
process for the same result. And then the finish work is really what makes it completely different from one to the next.
Yeah.
So
I
the
imagine that's cool too. So I have not handled even one of your customs yet. I'd like to change that soon, but um, the sensation I think that the end user must get knowing that when you made their knife, that was all that you were working on, like
yeah,
headspace wise, that's all your hands were busy working on is kind of cool. It just seems like a different approach than like, oh, he was working on these 10 knives at once. Mine was released here because that's when he got this set of them done. And it might
mhm,
take a little longer, but the custom knife game of waiting on someone's books is a waiting game in and of itself. So I feel like
right.
it sounds like it's probably kind of worth the wait to know that when your spot comes up, that Brian Brown is sitting in his shop and it's just your knife and him getting like all the handiwork at once,
Yeah. And
That's
then
really
the one
cool.
thing I enjoy doing, which I don't post kind of the early on stages of the knives anymore. Like when I first started full time, especially when I went full time, it was so much social media, constant posts, every day, twice a day sometimes. And I still do sometimes, especially once I get into the finish work. But like I had said, with the beginning stages of it's all the same. It's you
Right.
could have a full Damascus frame lock and Damelcore blade, and the profiling and the initial contouring and setting the lock and drilling your holes. That knife looks exactly the same as a standard titanium frame lock with a CTSX HP blade. Side by side,
Right.
you get no difference. They both look identical. And,
Mm.
it's getting to that point of the finish work is really when it gets exciting. And doing them one at a time too allows me to send pictures to the customer. That's one thing I really
Mhm.
like to do. And one thing I've gotten feedback from a lot of guys telling me that a lot of makers, custom makers, don't have as much communication as I give them a
Yeah.
lot of times, which to me is weird. Maybe I look at it different. I came from a retail background. I had no trades schooling or any type of background like that where, some guys worked in machine shops or, you know, had desk jobs not dealing with customers face to face. Whereas the
Mhm.
job I had right before I quit was 100% commission. So if I didn't sell anything, I didn't get paid. Point blank, period.
Gotcha.
No salary, no hourly, nothing. So
I've been
I've
there.
kind
Yeah. I get you.
yeah, so I kind of brought that into the knife world, not really into the knife world, but into my knife world, my business, and the constant communication is huge. And
Mhm.
that people, I'm probably a year behind on some people's orders. And I told them situations of what's going on and why I'm behind. And okay, no big deal. Thanks for letting me know. Okay, cool.
Right.
As long as you talk to people, they're fine with it. So it makes it even better once you start, like you said, once you start working on their knife. and they start getting the build progress pictures of every day I'm working on it. Here's where it's at. A few hours later, this is what's done. The next day, here's what's done. And so, I really like that type of stuff too. So getting to just to see that progression, and they can go back, and whenever they get it in, they want to, show it off to their buddies or whatever. They can go back to their Instagram or Facebook messages or their emails or however it is we're communicating, and they can be like, hey, this is where it started. He's doing all this by hand, step by step of how I basically did it.
That's awesome, man. I mean, I haven't even really started playing like the true custom knife game yet. I'm confident I will eventually. I just haven't gotten there yet. But all of that sounds like it makes a lot of sense to me because I worked customer facing for years and years and years before doing this, right? But B, like a lot of the complaints that I hear from friends who do play the custom knife game and are constantly seemingly on several different makers' books, and they're got different builds and different parts of the progress, and all of that is like the number one thing I hear people complain about is communication. Like that this maker, he said it would be 6 months. It's now been 8 and he hasn't even said anything. And I've sent him 2 emails and he hasn't even gotten back to me. And it's like stories like that make me feel a little bit more hesitant about.
It turns off a lot of people, and I understand that. And so that's, like I said, one thing I really focus on is the communication, because I don't want to be known as one of those guys that don't communicate,
right?
And I had overextended my orders a little bit in 2019, and so, like I said, I'm probably a year behind on some people's stuff. But every person I've talked to and said, hey, sorry, I'm behind, it's going to be X amount of months before we get to it. Okay, they're fine with it. And that's how most people are. And I've had maybe 2 people back out and not want their build for whatever reason. And I'm not mad about it. I get it. Stuff happens, life happens. I've got kids, I've got a house, I've got cars, things happen. You can't pay for it. Your time's up in 2 months. And, last year and even into this year with all that's going on, a lot of people not working. Hey, I get it. I was lucky to not slow down one bit. And had like 1 customer back out from the pandemic.
Amazing.
Yeah. And it freaked out a lot of people, especially when you're your own boss and, the main income for the family, you're relying on people buying toys.
Right.
It's a non-essential product. Nobody needs a $1,000 custom knife.
Right.
Nobody needs a $300 production knife. Really the only knife you need these days is a cheap kitchen knife, and I'm not even going to say a set of keys to open a box. That's just blasphemy. But, so, but yeah, it's, I approach this with in my own way, and it works for me.
That's good, man. So let's back up a little bit. I'm curious, before making knives, you worked pretty customer facing. What was it that got you to get into making knives? Was there something pivotal that happened, or was it just something you always wanted to do? How did that kind of transition happen?
So my grandfather, I think even my great grandfather, and my dad all kind of did woodworking for fun. They were never full-time carpenters or anything like that. It was always just kind of woodworking on the side. And I think I told this story with Tom and Jason, but I always enjoyed working in the shop and stuff, and that woodworking that my grandfather had kind of gave my dad a passion, which he was the youngest of four. He had three older sisters.
Hmm.
So he was the only kind of boy that really was possibly going to take over getting into woodworking. There's women out there that do it, but it's a vast majority of this type of work is done by men.
Sure.
So he ended up catching the itch just like my grandfather did. And so growing up, I'd go out, he had a shop, and just, tinker around, and it was fun. I like doing that stuff. And Boy Scouts, Pinewood Derby cars, stuff like that. It was always fun to go out and make something.
Hmm.
Then he gets into like wood turning. And so after my grandfather died, he got his lathe. And so, I tried that. Nothing really kind of caught on, but I liked working with my hands. I always thought I was going to be a custom car audio guy. I always loved cars. I always loved speakers. And I was certified nationally as a car audio installer at one point. And I thought that's what I was going to do. Well, found out real quick that's not what I want to do. The area I live in is not a good area for that. There's no market. And I'd have to go off to school to go get, sort of known. So anyway, I just never really found anything that caught on with woodworking that just really drove a passion to keep wanting to do it. Like with my dad and the wood turning, and he's retired now, and he's in that shop as much as he can.
Yeah.
Which is a lot now that he's retired. So, I saw a video one day on a slow day at work. I was just scrolling around YouTube and stuff, and could have been Instagram. I don't even know how I came across him and his videos, but a lot of guys are familiar with Aaron Go. I think it's how you say it. Gough. It's Golf. Maybe it's Golf Custom, and he's in Canada. He did some awesome YouTube videos on how to basically make a knife with hand tools. So I watched that thing 4 or 5 times, and I was like, he's basically using hand files, a wooden jig that he made with an eyelet screw to set the angle for your file, to file the bevels. He set up 2 fire bricks and a MAP gas torch that you can go buy at Lowe's.
Right.
So he's hand filing this thing. You're talking an hour and a half probably per
For sure. Yeah.
on an annealed blade, not even a hardened blade, to try to file this thing out and get the bevel down on something that's tiny.
Yeah.
The first fixed blades I did were 6 or 7 inches overall, and they were taking me 2 months to make one. Working on them when I had free time. I started I say I started 5 years ago. I think the first one I really kind of started like 6 years ago, but I think it took me a year to make 2. I don't really count that. That's
Gotcha.
piddling around, really, But I saw his video and I made one, and I was like, this is fun. I like this. It's a lot of work, but you start doing research and you go down a rabbit hole real quick on stuff like this, and just the different equipment you can get, and the money rabbit hole gets deep too.
I'm sure.
And that's one thing that was hard, because I had kids coming or already here. And so kids in daycare, not a lot of money. And I made a couple, and working in the job I had was with selling 4-wheeler parts and motorcycle parts at a local dealership. Well, you get a lot of outdoors type of guys, hunters and stuff like that you deal with. And that was the 100% commission job. So I had a lot of repeat customers that only dealt with me because they knew I was on commission. They wanted to deal with me, and they're avid outdoors people. Like, hey, I'm starting to make some knives. I sold a couple to some good customers, and it just kind of snowballed. And I was just kind of selling them to friends and family customers that I already had from that job. And a buddy of mine convinced me to start up a Facebook page and an Instagram. And I was like, that's nobody. I was like, this is just, this is just for fun. Nobody's really going to want to buy these. I'm not going to sell these online. It's not going to happen. He's like, just try it. So I had done a few, and I posted them up, and started. This was before Instagram went to be a shitbox, and and you could actually get followers, and you could actually go to like the Discover search page, and you would see other knife makers in there.
Right.
Before they deemed these things, weapons of mass destruction. Dang near, it's ridiculous.
Yeah.
The way it is now, and so I started getting some followers and people commenting and asking if they could buy them and stuff. And it really just kind of snowballed from there. And I used pretty much all the money from making them and selling them. I didn't use a ton of my regular income just because I didn't have a whole lot of disposable income. So I was able to just kind of take what I was making off of these and just kind of save it up and put it back into, this hobby, which pretty quickly within about a year almost turned into a part-time job. And or not really a part-time job, but a side hustle, really.
Yeah.
And I was lucky that I had nights. I got off at 6, so dinner, kids go to bed, play Xbox or go work on some knife stuff in the garage, So quickly every night. And then I was off every Monday. Wife's at work, kids are at daycare. I've got a Monday to myself. So that was my Monday job. I was making knives, and it turned into a side hustle, and I just got to the point to where I wasn't happy doing what I was doing, and a point in my life to where a guy that I go to church with said, hey, I'm going to need some help. He just moved up here working with an electrical company that was getting expanded to my area. And it was just him. He said, well, doing industrial stuff, he needs 2 hands a lot of times. And he's like, I'm going to need some help. And if you want to try, because I talked to him about doing the knife stuff maybe full time. I was like, I'm just worried about not having enough orders. And I've got 10 orders, but being full time, I could knock those out in 2 weeks, and worrying about having reoccurring orders. And if I make something, are people going to want to buy it? So, from there, it ended up, I decided to make the jump, and I worked with him, which thank God that only lasted about 6 months of having to do that, because that type of work is not for me.
Yeah.
Hats off to those guys that do that type of work. It's especially down here in the South. It's hot in the summer and humid, and it's like that more times than it's not. So thankfully that only lasted about 6 months, and I've gotten busy enough to where I've got book orders for probably a solid 1.5 years right now, if that's all I did. I've got shows planned to do. Obviously the production stuff's happened since then too, which that's a whole other story there that's on, a whole other side of this business apart from the handmade.
For sure.
And it's been a lot of fun, and it's just been kind of a snowball thing, like I said, and somebody asked me probably 3 months before I actually went full time, asking if I'd ever do it full time. It's like, there's no way. There's no way. And how quick things can change.
Yeah,
And it was also kind of, if I don't do it now and at least attempt it, I'll regret it later.
forever. Yeah.
And I left on a good note with the company that I was working for here, and if it didn't work out, they'd take me back tomorrow if I asked.
Yeah.
So, that was a blessing to have that fallback if it didn't work. And, I made it my goal to not go back.
Yeah, I feel that. So I relate super heavily because I started making content, like video content. I'd been on Instagram for a while, but I wasn't trying to do anything with it. I started the YouTube channel when I got furloughed because of COVID. And then for a few months, I was still furloughed. I went back for a minute and then I was kind of furloughed again. And like work was really inconsistent.
Yeah.
And I remember at first it was like a pipe dream, the idea of going like full time doing this. And it just kind of ended up naturally going that way to the point where now for a couple months I've been only doing that, and I specifically quit the job. Like I'm not going back.
Yeah.
And I do have to like supplement this quite a bit with working with my wife, which luckily she does content creation as well. So if I do photography for her and then I do this, then like I've made it make sense for me. But if you had asked me 6 months ago, like, would I be doing it this way now rather than it just being a side thing and hoping, I would have not believed that it was going to get to here. And that's really cool. I think the way that I guess this is a good question. You alluded to the fact that the production side of things has already kind of rapidly changed your business in the sense that it's a whole nother pillar of it, I'm sure. How has that, like, what adjustments have you had to make by adding that side of the business? Does that take away from your ability to make customs, or is it just extra, or like, how does that all?
It's all of the above. It's extra, which really, I don't really consider extra, because when you're the sole business owner of your company, there is no extra. It's you're working or you're not. That's how I look at it. So if I'm not in the shop, and I've had to get my mindset completely changed with this, and it's been hard for me with the way the production stuff's going in a good way. It's a good thing for sure, but it's been hard for me to adjust to the time management of both. I feel like I said, I've got all these orders, and I feel like I'm doing them a disservice almost by not being out here working, making one. If I'm sitting inside drawing something, but still that's work, and I've had to get out of that mindset. And there's days where I spend all day running errands, doing stupid stuff, going to the post office and this and that. And because it is only me, my wife has a full-time job. My kids are first grade and younger. So I don't have any, buddy really in the family to help me, which is fine. That's not a complaint. That's just the reality of it. So, and my wife helps out when she can, and so do my parents. Thankfully, they live close. My mother-in-law is close, and my sister-in-law and brother-in-law are close, and they all offer to help, especially with the production stuff, getting them in and having to ship out 200 to 300 knives at a time. That's the worst part of this whole job is that.
I hate it when I have to send like 5 knives at a time, and I can't imagine.
And then the just dealing with the shipping and sitting here putting that many. I posted a picture from the last pre-order with the V2s that I sent out,
Mhm.
I posted a picture when all the pre-orders were loaded up in one of these humongous carts at the post office, and just even when I rolled that cart into that back room, that's a lot to me. For one, that's a lot of money sitting in there.
Oh
And
yeah,
people paid me months before on pre-orders.
and it better make it there.
So it's, I'm checking tracking numbers, and I'm able to thankfully see a batch that says this many percentage have been delivered.
Mm.
And then I can scroll through and see real quick of delivered, not delivered. And, 2 weeks later, I see some that aren't delivered. Anyway, I'm getting off track, but, it's with the production stuff, like I said, with early on with the CAD, I've would spend, the day out here in the shop working, making a custom. Well, I've kind of gotten away from working at night. I don't really come out here after we eat dinner, because like I said, I've got kids, get them in bed, and I don't want to burn out either.
Right.
It could have, I could see it happening real quick if the production stuff wasn't there and this was all I did 24/7. Some guys do it and they love it. I couldn't do it. The weekends, I might do some stuff on the weekends, but really in the shop, 9 to 5 job kind of,
Yeah.
is where I'm at right now, because that's when my wife's at work. That's when the kids are at school, or I drop off my oldest at school. She gets home off the bus at 3. I might work until about 5. And then the wife and I, or one or the other, we end up going get the other 2 from daycare.
Mhm.
Get dinner, bath, bed, stuff like that. And by then, after 8 o'clock, I'm not in the right mindset to come out here and work.
Yeah.
I learned early on too with that's when I mess stuff up.
Gotcha.
So at night is when I spend all my time with the production stuff of communicating with the manufacturer, whether it was we on the first ones or that's lots of emails back and forth with them, especially because one way it does work out for the better is them being overseas is the time difference. So a lot of the times when I was getting replies from them was either early in the morning here or late at night. So it kind of worked out. I wasn't having to worry about scrambling around and getting what they needed while I'm out in the shop. I could do it afterwards when everybody else is in bed and I'm up till midnight talking to them through emails, or whether it was I'm sitting here trying to learn Fusion 360 on how to model these knives to look, because I want to be able to take them and model them how I want, instead of trying to explain to them what I want. I want to be able to model it and send it to them in a 3D file, and they want 3D files anyway. So
Right.
the version 1, which I actually have the prototype here from I had the 2D of this, and a good buddy of mine actually did the CAD for me. The 3D CAD, the Fusion.
Yeah.
So ever since then, with the next design I'm coming out with, the Raptor, those I've been basically teaching myself Fusion because I was going to do the second run of the V2s. So I've had this Raptor idea and stuff in progress for well over a year. Between in my head, finally getting it drawn. I actually ended up making a custom prototype and decided that's when I kind of decided it was going to be a production deal. It was too similar to the other ones. I was like, well, that's a good production idea for the future. So 6-8 months later, I finally started, tweaking the design and trying to learn Fusion on my own. And it's just watching a bunch of YouTube videos again.
Yeah.
That's how I started with the custom handmade stuff. So why not apply that to everything else that worked before. So,
Yeah.
I've taught myself kind of how to use Fusion for just sending them the files that they need so they can get a really close idea of what it's going to look like. And then they can model it and tweak it how they need to, because I can't draw a lock bar insert yet. I'm not that good at it, but
Right.
everything's good enough to where the profiles there, the blade geometries there, or the block geometries, how I want it, the blade fits in the handle, then they can go do all their little tweaks that they need to. So that was all the stuff that I do at night, and now I've kind of transitioned to doing some of that stuff during the day because it does take a lot of time. And just with other guys like Felix with Something Obscene or Adam Purvis, you see those guys just posting a bunch of knives, and behind the scenes, it's day to day. They're not just sitting there. The knives don't just show up.
Right.
It's not just free money. It's a good bit of work behind it, on top of having the idea for the design, but then it's a lot of communication. It gets stressful, especially doing pre-orders. That's a lot of weight on you. At least it is for me, of having that much money that's technically not yours yet.
Right.
Because your customers haven't gotten the product, so that 3 to 4 month wait, and people get anxious and they want their stuff. Trust me, I want it a lot more than you do.
Yeah.
Because I want you to have it so I can say, hey, that's my money now.
Yeah.
You got your goods that you paid for, and I got the money, and we're even Stevens now, and that's the most stressful part of it. But once they get here and you're able to have them in hand, and the giddiness that I had when these V2 showed up, because I had the prototype and I knew essentially what they were going to look like.
Mm-hmm.
But I guess they don't hollow grind their prototypes. So it was going to be, obviously it's hollow ground.
Right.
The actual run is, but the prototype was not. So I don't know how you can really see. You can kind of tell.
I can tell that's flat.
That's a full flat grind. And the same thing with the chucks that I'm doing right now with that fixed blade is it's going to be hollow ground, but the prototypes are not. They're flat. And I'm guessing it's because of the setup they have to do for the hollow grind. So it's not worth them setting it all up and making all these jigs and stuff just for a prototype if it needs to change. So
right, because if you're going to make an edit, they don't want to go that deep down the rabbit hole. Yeah,
exactly. So once I got these in, and there was also miscommunication on the prototypes of what I was actually going to get. I thought I was getting one of each, like a titanium flipper and then a non-flipper micarta. That way I had, because they're identical other than the inlays.
Right.
So I was going to have a flipper version and a non-flipper version in hand, as well as a micarta and a titanium in hand, so I could see the differences. I'd be able to swap the blades over if I wanted to for all my pictures. Well, I ended up with 3 of these. So I didn't even get to see a titanium, which didn't really bother me because I knew what the finish was going to look like on these, and it was going to be the same.
And that's the simpler one than the inlay one. If the inlays didn't look right, then that's a bigger problem than flat titanium.
I would have had to just wait even longer if I got, the titanium ones and not the inlay one. So thankfully I did get the inlays. And then you can see on here too, it's a lot, the collars are smaller. It's got that weird funky screw in it. They took my drawing to heart. And that's one thing that made me want to learn Fusion and stuff better, was to send them this drawing because all I could draw was just a pre-made hex. That's
Mm.
what they sent. This has got 2 6mm Allen wrenches. So you got to take 2 Allen wrenches to get this thing apart, and they're super shallow. It's cool, but it's
Not ideal.
no, because nobody has 2 6mm Allen wrenches laying around.
I don't. I mean, I could find them, I'm sure, if I really needed to, but yeah.
Everybody that does anything with knives, they're all Torx. So I got these, and I said, hey, I want all. Actually, no, I asked them for a T10 and T8, and they did all T8s, which I was fine with because it worked. It wasn't too. I was worried about the T8 being too small and not being able to get enough torque on it or stripping it out, but they've been fine.
Yeah, I like all T8s. When the whole knife is T8s, I just last night when I was doing this clip, which I don't know if you saw my Instagram post, I de-anodized it. The video is processing right now. I was hoping it would go live tonight, but it's taken forever. But yeah, like that was just a clip stop, so it was just T8s. But then I was also I disassembled a Vero to throw skiff bearings in it just to give it a shot. And that one, the whole knife is T8s, every single screw on it. And it's like, it's great. I just need one driver. And I don't even need 2 for the pivot. It's just, it's keyed on one side. Like, it's perfect. That's exactly what I want, is to just have a tool, and disassembly is a breeze then, instead of like, I'm always inadvertently, accidentally putting the T6 in a T8 hole. And then I'm like, oh crap, that's the wrong one. And, you know, scuffing stuff up. It's better if it's just a tool for the knife, and then you're done.
And that's one big thing that I want to talk about and give a big shout out to a Riot on these, is that show side. And I'm sure a lot of guys have taken these apart and they've seen it. And I actually did kind of a disassembly video. It's not going to focus, is it? It's a horrible webcam, but it's keyed in here on the pivot into the collar. And the collar actually has 2 locating pins that sit into the frame. So that keeps the collar from rotating, and then it's got a square basically machined into the back of the pivot on the show side that keeps it from spinning. And then the pivot and the pivot barrel are all one piece. So the only thing that can spin
is the screw.
That's genius. You don't have to worry about anything free spinning, because that's one thing I've swapped to on my customs are blank show sides. But they're not anywhere near that complex. Right. If I loaded it up with Loctite, like Riot and we like to do, you'd be spinning all day fighting it, you know. And that's one thing I didn't want. And that's one thing I really didn't know how well it was going to work out, because I made that change after the prototype. So I really, you know, I wasn't going to ask and wait another 6 weeks for prototypes just for some screws and a hollow grind, you know. So that was the only stressor for me, was like, what are these hollow grinds going to look like, you know?
They turned out great. It's one of my favorite parts of the knife.
Yeah, and when I said I got these things in, and I flicked open the first couple of them and heard that little ting from that real thin grind, man, I was ecstatic. I was like, that grind and the action and the consistency in all of these was so good. I was like, I think that this just made the wait worth it for everybody.
Yeah. So one of the things that I've been saying too in a lot of my videos lately, I've reviewed recently a good few knives that are designed by US designers, or I guess one would be Voxnay's design, but by designers that I really like and built by Riot. It's just been a sweet spot lately of knives. Like, I haven't had one recently, but the first one that really proved this to me was like the Sharp by Design Evo, the Typhoon. I had one of those first ones. I got secondary, but I was lucky to get one. And then there's your knife. There's the Urban EDC F5.5, the Voxnay's design. There's the Birch Tree Secant. What else is there? There's the Pina knives, the X series knives that he does. I've had like a bunch of these examples lately, and I've handled quite a few Wee knives, quite a few Best Techs, quite a few. Like, a good number of Chinese knives, some from American designers as well. And I think there's just this sweet spot happening right now with Reat for this level
Oh
of
yeah,
their collaboration pieces. And they're better than their in-house designs, not just like in the sense that the design speaks to me a little bit more, but even when I've held the ones that are like their catalog knives, they're just something more special when they're doing someone else's
right,
design in a small run. Because yours was
right,
300 pieces, right?
right. Yeah.
Like I feel like they must just be taking an extra bit of care when they're doing these small runs, because I'm genuinely impressed by them, and I keep kind of tooting that horn over and over in my reviews.
What's so crazy about that, and you're 100% right. And I don't want to say anything bad about we. I dealt with them on the first run, and this is a first run with we, and there's nothing wrong with this at all. It's great.
Mhm.
It works just as well as these, but the small details and the attention that they do, and just I don't know what it is. I sent we and I sent Riot the exact same file, CAD file,
Mhm.
exact same file. And everybody that had a version 1 that got, when I got them in and shipped them all out, loved it.
Mhm.
I had 3 that I really couldn't sell during quality control that had some issue. And then everybody that got on there excited, ecstatic with them. They loved them. Then I did the V2 pre-orders, and the only reason I'd swapped to Riot was because we didn't want to do 300 pieces in 4 different versions.
Mm.
Even though it's only 2 different frame styles and 2 different blade styles, and then you can mix and match.
Right.
It was 100, which I did 150 of that first run.
Mhm.
Doing it that way was going to be 150 and 150, but they
Right.
didn't want to mix and match.
You're just assembling them differently. Yeah.
Right. They excuse me, they didn't want to do it.
And you don't want to pull them in and rip half of them apart to do swaps yourself, I'm sure.
Well, their minimum order really is 300. So kind of as a trial run, being a new customer as I was to them, they they allowed me to do 150. Because when I first contacted them, was talking to them, they said their minimum order quantity is 300, and Riyadh's the same way, which is understandable. So the cost on those first runs was almost more than the ones from Riyadh on my end, because it was a smaller number.
Mm.
The more you do, the cheaper they become.
Yeah, so right now I'm in this stage of that process. I'm very I don't say much about it on purpose because nothing is set in stone yet. But a buddy and I have designed a knife together. We've had it put into 3D. We've 3D modeled it, and we've been shopping who we're going to have build it for us. And right now it's interesting because all this stuff you're talking about, I'm just like really relating to, because it's like we've got the manufacturer that we've kind of picked down to 150 minimum for the first run, so we can stomach it because it's our first knife ever. And now we're like trying to figure out how many variations do we want to do? How many will they let us do? Like, we probably want to keep it pretty narrow in terms of SKUs anyways. But it's very interesting to me because I literally like every day, this is where my headspace is right now on that project. And so it's cool to hear the way you've gone through it and how it's progressed past it, because right now I'm just dealing with like here and now. So this is valuable information for me.
Yeah. And the stress goes away when everybody finally gets them.
Yeah. I imagine after they've pre-ordered is the most stressful part, because like you have to put some money down to begin the project. At least that's what I'm finding. And then you get some prototypes, which you're in for some money. Maybe you make some edits, maybe you don't. And then once you greenlight the project, hopefully with a pre-order behind you, you're
Right.
able to fund the rest of the project.
Right.
But even then, like on a first run, doing the math, it's really about like breaking even, paying yourself back on the deposit, and then hopefully having some at the end to roll into like a next run and not be using
Right.
your own money again.
Yeah.
And so it's this thing that I think a lot of people don't understand when a small maker like you or Joseph Vero or Adam Purvis, any of these guys are doing a production run like this. It's not, like you said, it's not just printing money. It's not as simple as like, here's this design I'd like to have made. Oh, they're arriving from China. Here we go. Now I sell them and I'm rich. Like it doesn't go that way.
You've got, like with Adam and he does like the pocket clips and stuff, but that's for fun. That's not paying his bills.
Right.
The production runs are. And then like the same thing with like Vero with Joseph, which I've never spoken to him, but talking with like Adam Purvis and like Berg Blades with Matt and Felix. Berg still does a lot of custom stuff. Felix doesn't really anymore. It's just all production. You got to look at it too is those guys, which I'm a little different because I'm doing this full time too,
Right.
So I have income from this and I could work myself into the ground and pay all my bills off of just this and work 6 days a week like I used to. But like I said, I don't want to burn myself out doing that.
Yeah.
And that's why I made the jump into the productions. But back to the point of you're going months at a time with technically no income because, thankfully, everybody that I've mentioned between me and Adam and Felix and Matt, we're all blessed with amazing customers and we pretty much sell out. You can't ask for anything more than that.
Right.
And that allows you to have the want and, it's the supply and demand, the demand's there. And now I'm trying to get the supply back. I literally get messages every day asking about when more of these are coming.
Can I tell you how many people have asked me politely and aggressively to purchase mine? It's like incessant. It's one of those knives, and I have a few of them, where every time I post a picture or a story of it, I will get DMs asking if I will sell it to somebody, getting offers, getting just like flyers of please, like, or if you do let it go, let me know. I've had 30 of those on this knife. And if you let it go, think of me.
And I'll be honest, I don't get it. It blows me away. I still cannot fathom because the first run did well. I mean, I sold them all. I sold all 100. I only pre-ordered 100. I didn't do the whole run. I didn't put all 150 up. I did the first 100. And the first run I did, they were numbered 1 through 150. So I put up the first 100. Pick your number. There's one each. Pick your number. Good luck. And I was like, I'm going to leave it open for 7 days. And then at the end of the 7 days, fingers crossed, I've sold enough to, pay for it. And blew me away. 18 hours later, the all 100 were gone.
Yep.
And I was floored. I didn't know what to do.
On a first run, that's huge.
Yeah, it eased a lot of stress for sure. But, then the waiting and they show up and everything. And then the V2s came around. It's still super stressful. You don't know how many you're going to sell. And I sold almost double what I sold on the first ones because I put up pretty much the whole run. I was like, let's just go with it, And so now after those were done, like I said, I started on the Raptor. And getting that into progress, and then the same thing with these little fixed plays with these chucks. That was for me. People got the first run on these Yeagers and they loved them, and people were trying to get extras, and I was out, and I'd get a message, once a week asking when there was going to be more. It was nothing like what people are coming at me with these V2s now. I don't have plans in the immediate future for another run direct from me, because I want to have more than just those. Granted, I'm learning that that's almost my bread and butter now,
Hmm.
for my production design, even though I can't really say that because I haven't put out another folder yet. I
Yeah.
don't really count these because it's not a folder.
It's a different ball game. Yeah.
It's a completely different world, I've come to learn. And so I'm not in my mindset, their Jaegers are not even weren't well, they are now, but they weren't even on my mind to do another run right now, which they're not going anywhere. I'm not saying that I'm not going to do another run.
Hmm.
It's just not in the immediate future,
Yeah.
because I wanted to come out with the Raptor and these fixed blades, and hopefully I'll have Raptor prototypes within the next month once they all get back from their month-long holiday. But so thankfully, Knife Joy and EDC Foundry both reached out wanting to do some exclusives
That's awesome.
on these Jaeger V2s. And so but it's not even going to be 300 total between the two of them.
Yeah.
They're going to be exclusive as the designs, but they're pretty much going to be exclusive as the number of units that are going to be delivered too.
Hmm.
It's a decent amount, but it's not a ton of them. It's
Right.
kind of like Urban EDC with, these small batch exclusives like those
Yeah.
Vox.
And with where the level of want is right now for this knife, like I have one, and if one of those versions looks cool, I will be there at that drop
Yeah.
trying to get another one of those versions, and they probably will look great.
Now, the EDC Foundry one is going to be really cool. The Knife Joy one, people might go ballistic over trying to get them when they're sold out,
Gotcha.
because they're that cool. And I'm really hoping Zach and the guys over there at Knife Joy will let me have one.
Yeah. Zach's
I'm
a cool dude. I bet Zach will let you. I've talked to Zach a few times, and he's awesome.
hoping, and he's even told me, he said, "Man, I'm buying one of these for myself whenever we."
Sounds like I'm messaging him before this episode goes live.
So I actually talked to him today, and we're both just anxiously waiting on responses from Riyadh to get some more information on that project and get it really in swing. But hopefully, with the way the time frames are working out, what I've been telling everybody is June or July. We were really hoping to have them by Blade Show. I don't think that's going to happen.
Gotcha.
Unfortunately, just because whenever we started talking and throwing the idea around and everything and thinking about their normal time frame, because thankfully we don't have to wait on prototypes. We don't have to wait on prototypes. We don't have to have any of that, because
same knife, just different material or finish. Yeah.
Yeah, which is different. We're not changing anything mechanically or with the grind, or they're going to be the same machining for them. It's just different finishes.
Same, but different. I got you.
Yeah, different inlays, stuff like that. So it speeds the process up, which is good. But their wait time for pretty much anything for anybody, no matter the quantity, is 3 months. And I think they opened a new factory, is why recently, kind of like with my run and then some of the runs immediately after mine, were like some of these other guys seem to be delayed a little bit, is because I think they were moving factories. I think they opened up a new, bigger factory, which is good. So hopefully that'll help with production stuff, speed everything up. Because, I mean, if you look at, anybody that's used somebody else and then gone to Riot, they don't go away.
Right.
I've had another company that does OE and collab stuff and design collabs with makers, where they produce the design under their name and everything, but it would be like a design that I did for them
with their logo on it. Yeah.
Yeah, I had a company reach out and say, "Hey, I want to do some of your OE work for you too." And it's kind of hard to just say no. It's like maybe in the future, I need to handle some of your stuff because I don't know anybody out there, US, China, Taiwan, anywhere that can match Riot.
Yeah, they're top of the game right now for sure, especially for where they come in pricing wise. They're remarkable.
Oh, yeah, and that's another thing that's kind of blown me away is the amount of people that have told me I didn't charge enough for those. And that was another thing that I kind of stressed out about was because these were more than the V1s. I'm like, are people really going to get their money's worth out of these and feel like they got their money's worth out of these? It's so
I paid secondary price and I'm happy. And I don't normally do that. It goes against the grain for me to pay inflated secondary prices. And if I'm not going to just flip it after, but it's a keeper and I'm happy about it.
I'm with you. And my Facebook group alone, just seeing the very few that do go up for sale and what they sell for just blows my mind. And there's 3, 4, 5 people immediately saying, I want it.
Lining up. Yeah.
I want it. And it's $100, $150 over what I sold it for, and it's crazy to me. Because I'm kind of like you. I've got a small collection of, a couple customs and, some production stuff myself, but I don't really like paying secondary prices. And people that do, like you just telling me that you did and you're happy with it, that makes me happy, because that's one thing that I worry about, even though I've got, hundreds of these out there, I still want each person that gets it to be happy with it. It's my creation. I didn't physically make it, but it's still my name. It's my design. And I want people to like them and
absolutely
love them, use them and not just flip them, which I understand it happens.
Right.
But as long as they end up in the hands of somebody that will eventually use it, I'm okay with that.
As long as it gets there in the end. All right.
Yeah. And I see a lot of pictures and videos of guys that looks like it's never cut anything. That's fine. I'm okay with that. And then I see these other guys that have just beat them to crap. And I almost like that more.
Yeah.
But I'm also realistic and I know how this world works and how this game works with the customs and the high-end productions that I'm doing, and I don't really use my high-end productions and stuff. Even my own Yeagers, I don't really beat on them like I would think I would. I want to use it. If I got to do some hard cutting, I'm grabbing the box cutter.
Right. Yeah, I'm in that spot too where
don't want to do it.
Yeah, and I will hard use any knife that's in my collection if it's what's in my pocket and there's something that actually needs to be done.
Yeah.
But if I'm at home and I've got to process a whole bunch of nasty cardboard, I'm not going to go to my knife case and pick the nicest knife to do that either. I'm going to grab something that's a little lower on the budget spectrum and I'll go to work with it. But yeah, I have my favorite knife I say all the time is my Koenig Arius. And when I got my second Koenig Arius, I had to convince myself if I'm going to get another one, because I didn't use the first one. I felt bad about it. That's why I sold it. If I get another one this time, it's going in my pocket. It's coming out and it's cutting stuff whenever I need it to. And I have, and it's I love it. I enjoy it.
Yeah.
But But at the same time, I'm not like, oh, I need to go clean out the gutters on the roof and do a bunch of nasty stuff. Let me grab the Arius for that. Like, no, that's not what I'm doing
Yeah.
either. You know?
Yeah, I get that. And I'm the same way. It's I'm glad I have the prototype because I didn't really use the prototype of these because I want to keep them. I want to have them, just to look back on.
Yeah.
But I've gotten this one and I just finally had to like say I'm going to use it and actually just put it to use and start using it. I've got a big gash you can't really see it, but there it is. There's a big gash in the pocket clip. I've scratched up the screw, taking it apart and cleaning it out already. I finally dinged it up enough to where
You've crossed the line.
I've gone over I've stepped over the line of, all right, now I can just grab it, use it and go on. Cause like I said, I've got a few in my collection that I wouldn't really want to do that with, just some customs and stuff, and even customs of my own that I won't sell because they're not perfect, but still usable.
Mm-hmm.
I'll still rather go grab this or a box cutter, versus using those.
Yeah.
To keep them, because I end up showing those off as people want to see something,
Yeah. So I'm obviously very familiar with your Yeager being the only knife that I own. The chuck is the little fixed blade that's ringed, right? And then you've mentioned the Raptor, which I feel like I've seen you post pictures of, but it's been a little bit. Is that one you've posted one picture?
There's only one. Well, let me take that back. I've posted in the group in 2019 and on my Instagram in 2019 of when I actually done the prototype. It was a custom. So I'd originally designed it as a custom in my lineup. So I think I have them here. So I had a Taka fixed blade, which was a Tonto.
Mm-hmm.
And that ended up going into the folder as well. So that's Taka version 2 S. So the smaller. So this is 7.5. Then the full size is 8.5.
Okay.
Then I have the Falke, which this is a version 1, which is like a Persian style blade. Well, then I have the Raptor, which was kind of based off of the two of them. And I felt it was too close. So I did the prototype. It had some issues with the lock geometry I needed to tweak. So I decided, I was like, well, it's a little too similar to these two. I'll just keep it and sit on it. So since then, I've not even posted anything about it. I've mentioned, because I want to wait. I don't even think I've posted, or I know I've not even posted any of the CAD files of what the actual design is more or less going to look like. Because the prototypes were possibly going to be here about the same time as the chuck, because I started working on the prototypes at the same time as the chuck, the little fixed blade. Well, those didn't get done in time before their month-long Chinese New Year holiday. So hopefully they're getting back to work and I'll get them soon. But I'm waiting to get the prototypes in before I really reveal them. And so I've teased about it in some live videos that I've done. People know they're coming. Most people that follow me on a regular basis have heard me mention it. And I mentioned it on a live video. I don't remember when or why I was talking about it, but I was like, hey, by the way, you can go find the prototype because it's going to be really similar to that of the one I handmade back in I think it was June of 19.
Now there's going to be a lot of people just trying to dig back listening to this.
Well, what's funny is when I said that, by the time that live video or live stream, whatever I was doing was over with, somebody had already found it and commented on it in my group. So, with the groups, if you comment on something, newest activity goes to the top.
Yep.
So it jumped up, and then I had, 4 or 5 new comments on it where people saw it. So that was kind of a teaser of what it's going to look like so people can kind of see it. And Yeah, if anybody wants to go back that's watching this, is June of 2019. You can find it in my Instagram group or Instagram page or the Facebook group. It was there on both of them. And I don't even know, I don't think the group even had a final photos of it finished. I think it was just kind of the blade was done, the frames weren't done though.
Mhm.
But I ended up finishing it, and it's at a home that it will never leave from. Was the stick on the guy that got it. Uh,
Gotcha.
he ever sells it, it comes back to me. So, but yeah, that's the next model that's coming from me. Um, and the only other thing that I've got out there production wise are the V1s,
Mhm.
and there was only 150 of those, and not too many of those really pop up for sale. I think
Yeah, people have been looking for any Jaeger production that they can get right now, and it's none of them are popping up much.
and I think what happened with those is being it was my first production run, and the Jaeger's kind of been my most popular go-to design for my customs, and
Mhm.
that's why I wanted it to be the first production, was just something people recognized of me. And I've kind of just what some people have mentioned, which I didn't really even think about it, is because I'm up to like 60 or 70 Jaegers total on the custom side between the full size and the minis.
Mhm.
Um, and then now doing these production ones, I've kind of become the warranty guy, which a few people have told me that's how they see me now, is, I'm the Warncliffe guy, which, hey, I'm fine with it, but the my point being is that I think some of my early customers that had been around for a long time ended up getting those V1s,
Mm.
and they're not really going to let them go,
Yeah.
especially because they're numbered. And I kind of thought that might happen, being that they're numbered and people could pick their numbers, that they really weren't going to go anywhere because of that. Some
Mhm.
people got them for, their birth date or their favorite number, So my mom everybody was pissed off because so many people wanted number 13.
Gotcha.
So my mom wanted number 13.
She gets first dibs for sure.
Mom got number 13. And so all these people that were going on the pre-order day, 13 wasn't listed, and people are all getting kind of mad
Mm.
because they couldn't find it. It was, dang, it sold too fast. I missed it. Like, well,
Kinda.
kind of wasn't listed, but I can say that now. It's been about a year and a half since I did the pre-order, so hopefully nobody's still mad at me.
If people are mad at you, they can't be mad at your mom. I mean, come
Right.
on. She just wants little Brian's knife and her favorite number. Give her a break.
Well, she actually got it. Was it Christmas? Because I think it was right about October. So when they showed up, I think she ended up getting it. She gave it to my dad,
Mm.
is what it was. So he's
That's
got
awesome.
Yeah, he's got that, and he's got a V2. And what's really cool seeing him carrying that is because I kind of poked around in his shop all the time, doing woodworking and stuff. And now it's kind of coming full circle. He's kind of poking around over here because I've got the mill and the metal lathe. And so now he never really carried a big pocket knife like this. These aren't small. This isn't something that your father or your grandpa would carry around size wise. Well, now he carries around either his V1 or his V2 Yeager-m pretty much on a daily basis now.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and I love it. So I see him, he comes over to the house or something, you'll see it in his pocket, and so it's kind of full circle for me back to, he used to help me make stuff, and now I've learned to make stuff, and he's carrying around stuff that I made.
Yeah.
It's awesome.
Yeah, I imagine, I don't know, there's got to be, in general, a big sense of gratification to see not only people enjoy your work, but to see it actually like you're creating something useful that people carry with them all the time.
Absolutely.
And I don't know, like that's one of the things that if my current knife design or whatever timeline down the road, I create some kind of knife, whether it's production through a Chinese OE or like however it ends up happening.
Right.
That's one of the coolest things I think in my mind is seeing other people like share photos of it that they're enjoying it on Instagram, or if I go to dinner at my dad's place, if my dad has one in his
Yeah,
pocket, it'd be bananas to me. Like that's got to be so cool.
it
And
is.
yeah, that the feeling of creation itself of like taking materials and making them into something meaningful is like personally gratifying, but it's got to be another level when it's other people enjoying it.
And when it really hit me years ago was when before all the full time, because back before I'd make them, I knew who had them all.
Yeah.
I was making, it was only customs, so I had to talk to you for you to get one.
Mm-hmm.
So I sold one to a guy that he was gifting to somebody, and then it's kind of, I knew where it went, but I didn't know who exactly was going to get it, and I'd never see it again. Well, this was at the full-time job I had before I quit, and I was at work, and this kid comes in. He's like, I say kid, he was younger than me. He's like early 20s maybe.
Mm-hmm.
And this was when I was only doing fixed blades. And he comes in and he had this fixed blade on his hip. Kind of looked at it. It looks a little familiar. Like, wait a minute. I said, how you like that knife, man? He said, oh man, it's awesome. My buddy such and such gave it to me, which the guy that I sold it to. He's like, he gave it to me, and the guy, he's like, I think he works here, made it. It's like, yeah, it was me.
Yeah.
No way.
Of course I know him. He's me. Yeah.
Yeah. So, just the two of us just got so excited because I'd never seen anybody carrying one of my knives that I didn't know.
Yeah.
Because I probably didn't even have 25 or 30 knives total at the time.
Yeah, the odds of spotting one in the wild when there's only that many. That's
yeah. And granted, 90% of them had stayed around this area. But then again, like I said, I knew everybody that had them.
Yeah.
And so now with the productions, I still love seeing the customs, but it's kind of the same thing. I know where they're going, to an extent. They get bought and sold a lot and change hands. And so I'll see a custom get posted up by somebody that I didn't know who had it. It happens. It used to bother me when people sold the customs because it was like, even the productions to an extent in the beginning was like, why'd they sell it?
Right. Did you not like it enough to keep it?
Like it? Was there something wrong with it? And they just didn't want to tell me, so they just sold it. I don't want something that's, some half-ass work out there, that's something that I could have looked over. And then you start going, through your head over that whole build. Like, did I miss something?
I bet 95% of the time it's someone like me who sells a lot of knives that they love to keep buying different new knives.
Exactly. And that's probably what it is. And I've realized that's a lot of what it is they either, it happens, they overextend themselves and they shouldn't have bought it in the first place, and then they got to sell it.
Yeah.
Or that's not their flavor for this week. And
or someone offers them a trade of something that's been a different grail of theirs, and they're like, this is the key to unlock that other thing I want to try.
Yeah, that's what it is. It's, they have a set budget for their knives, and like, well, if I want to buy this Vero that I really want, I'm going to have to sell my Yeager-m or my Purvis or my something obscene, namely, or whatever. That's just how it is. And I've learned to accept it. They're not selling it because it's garbage and they don't like it. They're just selling it because they want to try something else from somebody else.
Yeah.
But
even if you were going to buy a new mill tomorrow, you'd probably sell your existing mill if you could get money out of it, so that you could help fund the next one. Like, I think
I've
that's
done the same thing with knives before too, and I had not a bunch, but I had like 1 or 2 customs and 7 or 8 like a high-end productions, and I had an issue early on with some bad design on one of my customs, which was the Taka, that version 2 I showed you. The reason it got swapped to the version 2 is because the version 1 just had some design flaws. I'd spent a bunch of money on getting a bunch of blades and stuff cut at water jet, and the titanium and the water jet costs and the steel costs. And I've got a drawer full of probably 25 or 30 knives I could build out of those, but they weren't up to par. I trashed them. And so I had to sell off a bunch of my knives to afford being so early on. I had to pay for new material and more water jet costs. I mean, it was $700 or $800 worth of stuff that basically just went in the garbage, that I realized that the design wasn't working after I had made 6 or 7, 8 of them. I can't remember how many I did total, and realized the design wasn't working. I was fighting it more. I was like, I just got to cut my losses and trash it and sell some of my toys and
move forward.
with it, so I get it. But, back to what we were talking about is, with the production stuff, I try to comment something. It's hard to comment something unique, especially when I've got so many of these out there now.
Yeah.
I don't feel bad if I don't comment, but I would prefer to. I try to go through, and each time somebody tags me, I like to comment, at least say thanks, hope you're enjoying it.
Yeah.
Something,
It means a lot. I think you've commented on every picture I've posted of the knife so far. And it's awesome when the maker who there's a reason why I'm tagging the maker, is because I hope that they like seeing that I'm enjoying what they made. I'd want that if I was the maker and I was in their shoes. And so it's cool when the maker's like, oh dude, great picture, or whatever it is. It's like, cool, they saw it. They know I'm liking it.
Yeah. And I get it on why makers don't always comment or like. It's easy to miss.
Oh, I don't get to all of my comments these days between Instagram and YouTube and Facebook groups and all these places where I'm really active. I try to at least like all of them, but there are times when I genuinely don't have the time to be able to upload 2 videos a day, get a post up, be engaging, and get to everybody. It's just, I wish I could, but.
And I have to, that goes back to my time management of there for a long time. I'm out here, I've got headphones on, I'm working, it's Bluetooth, I hear my phone go off, I'd stop, check my message, and it's so-and-so reacted to your picture. I just stopped for no reason, basically, and having, today, I posted a screenshot of these spam accounts I keep getting on Instagram. And seriously, over 3 or 4 hours it was posted, I probably had 40 messages of people reacting to the photo or saying something about the same things happening to them. I ended up deleting the story because it was so many people messaging me about it.
Yeah. And
I kept hearing my phone going off. And thankfully, they've got it set up to where you can have your primary and your general messages.
Oh, I use that a lot now.
Yeah. It's 100%. If I don't know you, you're in the general account, honestly.
Yeah. Which is fair. That's why that feature exists.
All these people that just react to my photos all the time, I'm glad they're engaging. I'm not putting it off saying they're second-class citizens because we don't talk like this or they don't have an order with me. It's just if they're just reacting to it, that's not something I need to stop work to go see,
And people are reacting to your stuff because you're a maker who's talented, and at the end of the day, what they want you to do is keep making. So if you're keeping that focus and your head's in the game, the space that you're that's what they want to see anyways. That's better than you responding to people reacting with a little fire emoji to your story. Be making the fire,
keep making it. Yeah. And I get a lot of messages, especially in the Facebook group. Over the weekend, I just done it was 1.5 minute long video talking about the thumb studs I was making. And people enjoy seeing that type of stuff, behind the scenes type stuff. But again, with the time management, it's hard to try to do all of that on top of working. And I've kind of slacked off a lot on showing kind of some of my processes just because it's hard to do.
Yeah.
And I can understand why guys like Alex Steele and that YouTube channel he's running over there, why he's got like 4 people working with him just for cameras and editing and social media and stuff. There's no way he could keep track of a third of it with the way.
Even with his team, they're probably not even getting to half of it.
No. And it's, what he's doing is incredible. And I don't see how he has free time to do anything because of just how time consuming just social media in general is.
Yeah.
And I've had to back off a lot because of that, and just kind of do, here's where I'm at on this build right now, instead of, setting up the tripod and showing how I grind a blade, which, I've done some of that in the past and I still want to do some more of it, but it's never going to be anything like what those guys put out, like full blown build videos.
Right.
I tried it one time. I think I got 2 pictures and a video into the build, and then I completely just forgot about it because I just get in the zone a lot of times.
Keep going.
And I just get my rhythm and I just keep going, and I don't think about it, and kudos to you and people that can do stuff on YouTube, because man,
it's its own animal for sure.
Yeah. And one thing, which you might have some insight on this for me, one thing I've thought about doing is setting up a YouTube channel mainly for production stuff.
Sure.
Showing like even, basic maintenance on the Yeager or the Raptor, or here's a disassembly video of it, if that would be beneficial. Because I was talking to, I don't know if you're familiar with Slice FK. He deals with, he's Matthew Patton. He does pretty much all custom, what's the word I'm looking for? Not all consignment, but he's basically a retailer for custom knives.
Yeah, he carries a lot of really high end stuff, right?
Pretty much it's all custom right now is what he's doing. So anywhere from guys like me to like, I don't know if he's ever even sold any that he's gotten on the site, but like Stan Wilson, you're talking $10, $15, $20,000 knives. The average knife on his website right now is probably $1,500 to $2,000. That's what he deals in. But he was actually at the shop with some other collectors a few weeks ago, and I was talking to him about the same kind of thing with the messages and the one thing I noticed about the Yeagers is with this really kind of low grit flat finish, detent ball gets dry, gets a little gritty. Well, people hear it, they think it's the bearings. They think
it's the actual bearings, yeah.
Not just the detent ball dragging a little bit, and all it needs is, you don't even have to take it apart, put a little dab of oil on it. Yeah. And we were talking about just stuff like that, and he's like, man, it was his idea. He's like, you should set up a YouTube channel for stuff like that and just embed it on the website. Yeah. And just have the link to where people ask about it. You don't have to go into the whole explanation like you're doing every time.
Send them a link.
All you got to do is just send them the link.
Yeah. So one of the things that I think would be really advantageous about doing that type of thing is YouTube, in essence, is just a kind of reverse platform compared to a lot of other like social media, if you will, because videos that are older on YouTube are not less favorable than newer videos. It's actually oftentimes the ones that have some age behind them you're almost more likely to see in terms of how the algorithm shows stuff to you. Sure. So if you're a maker, and you're not on YouTube for content creation in the sense that you're trying to grow a following or anything like that. You're trying to create a reference page for questions regarding your product that you make. It's the perfect place to put it because those videos never go bad. People can use them if they search by you and know you have a YouTube channel. Then even when they're shopping for the knife or when they're waiting for the knife to arrive, as everyone does while it's in the mail, they're watching every bit of content they can about it. Then they can see the maker talking about it. And like, I'm trying to think of a good example. I want to say either Andrew or John Demko on their YouTube channel. They've done some very simple stuff on the 80/20, just showing like disassembly, what it's like inside, how to maintain it. And those videos are great and they'll be great forever because anybody who gets an 80/20 and has a question about it, there's a reference video from the maker showing how it works. And it can be short, simple. You're not trying to like reach a certain length because you're not worried about watch time. You're just creating a resource. And yeah, it'll live forever. It'll be usable as long as YouTube is there.
And I actually did a kind of a when I got them all in, and I think it was when I got them all in, and kind of once before when I was still in the process of getting all the pre-orders shipped out, I had done a live video, kind of doing what you're doing. Just, you know, people want to see them. They're here. I'm getting this thing in like the next week or two. Well, month or two with the way mine went, because when I decided to ship them so close to Christmas and the way the post office was that time of year.
Yeah.
Especially with this last year was horrid.
It was the worst I've experienced for sure.
And I had 300 knives in the mail. That was nerve wracking. But so I decided, I was like, well, you know, the whole pivot thing I was talking about earlier, I was like, these little details Riot did compared to what the Wii ones, and these little differences, I was like, people need to see this.
Yeah.
And it's not even, I can't even really take credit for that stuff. The detent ramp that was added, the way that pivot is set up, the little stuff like that, the pocket clip, which I'm sure you noticed you took yours off, the pocket clip sits in a little pocket in the frame. So one issue I had with the V1s is the screws would get a little loose.
And then the whole thing's wiggling.
Yeah. Well, on these, that's not going to happen.
Yeah. It's like almost press fit. It's just a perfect little puzzle piece into there.
The prototype, I didn't even know it was like that until I took the pocket clip off of the V1 to see if they would interchange. I knew I was doing Damascus pocket clips. I was like, so hopefully people can buy it and it'll fit a V1 or a V2. And then I realized it's in that little pocket in the frame. I was like, well, that's not going to work, but that's a really cool design feature I didn't even know they added.
Yeah.
So, you know, I'd done that video and I was showing all the different versions, talking about them, and it was a Instagram live that probably ran for about an hour. So it was a little long for like a disassembly video.
Yeah.
Because I got into a lot of other nonsense, but people enjoyed watching it. I still get comments occasionally from people that have watched it, you know, months later. People that have asked me kind of about the internals on them. I'm like, it's a little long, but if you want to go watch it, there is that.
Yeah.
And so when I was talking to Matthew Patton about this, like I had said, I was like, man, that's the perfect idea to do that. And now it's just kind of, I need to get the time to do it. You know, I started getting, you know, since I didn't even have a webcam until I did that video with Tom and Jason in the Spyderco group. And I had to go get a webcam. Now I've got a decent camera, but it's just a digital SLR that the video is horrible on. I just use my phone for everything, which
the first few months of my channel, I was on my iPhone 11 and no external mic, nothing fancy. I was just using my iPhone on a cheap tripod, and I did my first, I don't know, 100 videos like that.
Wow.
It works.
Yeah. And in the way the phone quality is these days, it's great.
Yeah, so, fantastic.
but yeah, just seeing with like what you do and what these other guys do, it's kind of like I'm not trying to, like you said, be a content creator on YouTube.
Mhm.
So I just want to have more resources out there for my customers, and I'm starting to realize real quick why big businesses, not even like Fortune 500, but just even successful mom and pop stores in your local area pay people for their social media stuff.
Yeah.
You know, depending on how production stuff keeps going for me over the next few years, it very well could get to the point to where I'm paying somebody or something to help me manage just that side of it, just to
Yeah.
help keep it straight. It's a full-time job in itself. And there's days where, like I said, where I'm out here working all day, you know, 8 to 5 in the shop, and then go, dinner, bed with the kids, and after that, I'm on my phone. If I do a pre-order, I will be on my phone from the time it hits nonstop until I decide to go to bed at midnight or 1 o'clock.
Yeah.
Once the initial influx calms down and people are wondering this and that, and I ordered the wrong thing because I got too excited. Can you swap it? Can I buy another? My order is not working. Why can't I buy this on your website? And people commend me sometimes on thanks for responding so fast. Especially during pre-orders. Like, I know you got the pre-order going on. Thanks for responding. I'm like, I don't know how I'd be successful if I didn't.
Yeah.
If I just ignored all these messages, like I know what's going to happen. So, like with the Chucks a week and a half ago, I told my wife, I said, "Hey, it's starting at 6," and I was rushing home from the drive-through that took longer than expected, and I got home like 5 minutes before they went live. So I'm sitting here trying to
Be ready.
burger in my mouth, and I'd done the Chucks. I had the pre-order active for those, and then I had set up 12 bit drivers. Well, I was trying to get them both posted at the same time. So I've got, my page set up on the computer. I got my page set up on my phone. I've got all the quantities loaded, waiting on the same time to hit go on both of them.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm watching, thankfully with Shopify, you can watch your traffic. So, the closer you get to time, your numbers of people on the website are going up, and you just see people are on the website, F5, F5, they're just sitting there refreshing that
I've
page.
been that guy.
Yeah. And if the maker or the business owner of that is not sitting there staring at their orders and waiting for messages and emails to come in my opinion, they're doing it wrong.
I agree. Yeah.
And that goes back to what we talked about early on with the whole communication thing. Is I take that as serious as I do everything else. I'm not going to send you a knife that doesn't work properly. And I'm also not going to ignore because I'm too busy.
Right.
And that's one thing that bugs me is I've messaged people about stuff and I don't get a response. And then you see them doing something else and commenting on posts that they've posted because they're excited about something they just did, and they're commenting on those posts. But yet I've got a message sitting here waiting for you to add, just simple yes or no or something like that, and they ignore it.
Mm-hmm.
That bugs me, and I know it bugs a lot of other people.
Oh, for sure.
And I don't see how people can sit there and just ignore messages like that. It's not in my character to do that, and hopefully I don't ever change, because I credit that to a lot of my success, and how this has worked out so well for me is because of that.
Yeah.
And
I think just from the conversation that we've had so far, like a theme that I noticed with you is you seem really um, well thought out in everything that you do. So like when it comes to making the knives themselves, you're very deliberate about how it's done. When it comes to having the production knives done, you're very deliberate about the way you handle that process, how much time you allocate to it, how much time that takes away from making. You're like calculating these things.
It may
And
seem like that, but it sure doesn't feel like that sometimes.
well, but so a lot of people like the fact that you're expressing that means you're thinking about it at the very least. It doesn't mean you have to be perfect at it. There's a
Right.
lot of things that I analyze to death that I'm not perfect at, but I think that there are a lot of makers just from what I perceive and from what I can see where there tends to be, and I think this is true across industries. Like I used to work in automotive aftermarket, and you worked in aftermarket parts for off-road stuff, right? That's
Sure.
what you
Yeah. Yeah.
said. So like I knew guys who were in machine shops who were brilliant machinists, but terrible, 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 terrible at anything other than working the machine. And
Mhm.
yet they would own their own machine shop because of their talent at running the machines. And doing business with them was like the most frustrating thing in the
Right.
world. You happen to get a product that might be the best product, but it's tarnished by the whole experience of trying to get it and having
Right.
no communication, getting your deadline pushed without being told it would be, you've got a customer waiting, like that kind of stuff is a bummer. And then on the flip side, there's other people who are inverted in terms of their talents and they're really good talkers, and yet they're not actually good at making things really happen in
Right.
the real world. And so I just really respect it when I see people who you're a talented maker. I haven't held your customs, but I know a lot of people who have, and I'm pretty good at looking at pictures of knives at this point. I do it a lot. Um, I've handled your production knife and love it. One of my favorite knives. And so like I know that your work is good, and the fact that you're taking the effort, you're making the effort to be there when people expect you to be there as the person who's the business, and not just choosing to be a crusty old maker who's like it'll be done when it's done and I don't fool with that Instagram crap. Like
Right.
you have to. And I was just talking to Jason from the Millie Club, who you know as well. I
Sure.
had him on my podcast for last week's episode. I talked to Jason a lot. Love the guy. I love the way his
Yeah.
brain works. And he was talking about how at Blade Show, going through and looking at custom knives, there were a lot of really nice customs that he really was fond of. And one of the differentiating factors for him in deciding what type of custom knives he'd like to buy was how engaging is the maker? Do they act like they want my business? Are they hungry for it? Are they trying to grow and improve and like and to earn the perception of being a really cool maker? Or are they coasting? Are they just like, I'm just going to let it be what it's going to be? And I don't know. There's certainly some geniuses in the world who are terrible with social skills
Right.
and terrible at running a business. And it's not to say that they don't make a phenomenal product, but I think to be competitive and to be doing as much as you're doing, like you said, you're doing both right now. You're making customs like it's your 9 to 5. You also have a production knife company now that is one and the same, but is a totally different game. And you're
Yeah.
handling both, you're juggling it, you're learning it, and you're doing it with grace. I think it's a good thing just to see how much you're trying and you're not just like whatever happens, happens.
Yeah. And I mean, to an extent, sometimes I feel like it's whatever happens, happens, but I try to control that as best as I can. And I coming, I'm not the most popular in either aspect. I'm fairly popular in both now. I'm pretty well known for the customs now.
Mhm.
I'm pretty well known for my production now. A lot of people that are in the knife world have probably run across my stuff or heard of me now.
Mhm.
But I'm not at the top of either one. And I've kind of come up sort of slow through both of them, which I think is a good thing because I've seen and heard of the horror stories, and thankfully it's never really happened to me, but of, and me, as in me buying something from, this other person, of they're super popular, and then you basically just get ignored, or they, heaven forbid, they take your money and run, which it's happened, not really in the production game. There's one person I can think of that I've heard of, but it's more on the custom world. People want money up front for builds or stuff like that. But then coming up kind of slow, I kind of realized what not to do.
Yeah.
And I never really hit this peak of getting cocky. I know people want my stuff. I'm pretty confident anything I can make out of the shop right now that wasn't a custom order, somebody would want to buy it, and it's taken me a long time to get to that and to really accept it, because there's still that doubt there.
Yeah. The imposter syndrome. Am I worth it?
And people talking to just other knife maker friends, about that, they're like, you're crazy. You could make anything and somebody's going to buy it. Like, well, I still don't see it that way. I still have that doubt, of hopefully somebody will like this and want to buy it, and I just kind of got to go back and think of, well, look at all these orders that I have, of people that are waiting, people that do want something from me, people who have been waiting for over a year already that aren't complaining about me being behind, and that story you're telling me about Jason and what he was doing at the shows, there's a lot of guys that do that. And I've run across, as a maker at Blade Show, when I went in 2019, I didn't have a table. I've actually never had a table at a knife show. Last year was supposed to be my first year, but we all know how that worked out.
Right.
But I get giddy to an extent about going up to people and talking to them, of people that I follow on Instagram. Like, mainly it's a lot of custom makers that I really engage with all the time and follow and talk to, guys like Matt Christensen. I talk to him a decent amount. Jim Vandevelde, HMC. I talk to him a good bit. Other guys that, like, one of my best friends I talk to like every single day is Edward R. Knives, and Ed's down in Florida doing some ridiculous chef's knives and kitchen knives, and he's getting into folders and stuff too. And he's one of the most humble people you'll ever meet. And, those guys will talk to you all day long like I will. And they're successful at what they do, whether they're full-time or part-time doing this or what. And going up, and other makers that I followed that I just not really idolize, but love their work, and I'd meet them in person, and I'm just kind of turned off by them. Like,
real letdown.
Yeah, it's they're either got their own little friend group, and when you're talking to them, like in the pit at the at Blade Show, they don't really give you the time of day, because they're tired of talking about their knives. Whatever, I've been at the show all day, I just want to hang out with my buddies and drink. Or if you run into them at the show, if you're not wanting to buy something, they don't really want to talk to you.
Yeah.
As a maker talking to another maker, I'm not trying to buy your stuff. I just want to talk to you about your work. I like your work. I admire what you're doing. And then you're going to come back with, these short no answers, because you'd rather talk to somebody else, which I get it. You're there to sell stuff, but I also understand that I'm not going to take up a whole day.
Yeah.
I want to talk to you for 3 minutes, and it turned me off of a lot of people that I thought were awesome makers, that are good makers, but they're not great people. And then there's other guys that you think were going to be like that were just going to be up on their pedestal. And the perfect example, are you familiar with Michael Raymond?
Yeah, yeah.
Most people are, and he's making, his average auctions are $12,000, $15,000, and the pieces he makes are perfect. I mean, there's no other way to describe them.
Yeah. Too rich for my blood, but incredible. Yeah.
Yeah, and the level that he's at, I don't know anybody that could. There's very few people that can match him.
Yeah.
And you're talking month-long, 2-month-long builds when one knife takes me a week. He's spending 2 and 3 months on one knife, 8 hours, 9 hours a day.
It's crazy.
And his money that he gets from is well deserved. Well, he's one of the coolest people you'll ever talk to. And he'll let you pick up the knives, handle them, talk to him about them, and ask him a question. He'll answer it. You can kind of tell he's a very detail oriented person and sort of, I guess, introverted. He's not real social, but he'll take the time to talk to you. He'll let you handle it.
Yeah.
And it's going to go to somebody for the price of expensive
car,
an inexpensive new car.
Yeah.
So you could take my first 3 cars probably, and it wouldn't cost for what one of his knives auctions for.
Yeah.
And he'll sit there and talk to you all day, let you handle them and talk to him about them. And then other guys that are selling stuff for a tenth of what he does, that won't give you the time of day unless you're buying something from him.
Yeah.
So, and
it makes a difference. The first time I ever met Ramon Chavez was at California Custom Knife Show. And I wasn't super interested in his knives prior to meeting him. I thought they were cool, but not necessarily my style. And then I met him. He and his wife at the table. He had a full custom. I think it was a 229.
Yeah.
Let me handle it. Talked to me for a minute. Gave me the warmest handshake I got the entire day. And looked me in the eye, engaged with me, was very kind, and just like a really, really nice guy. And then again, the next 2 years in a row, I saw Ramon at CCKS. I've owned a couple of his production variants now, which are another great Riat built example. But it's like it just makes me like his knives 50% more because I like him so much. And that makes a difference at the end of the day when you're, like you said from the very beginning, these are toys. They're a luxury item. You don't have to have them. And so utility, especially when you're once you approach high-end production, and especially when you get custom, utility kind of goes out the window, and it's so much more liking the maker and what they do and the design language, and like the maker is so much more intertwined with that than buying a Kershaw because you need a knife at work.
Right. Yeah. And that's kind of how I've heard that about him. I've never met him. And like I said, I've never talked or met Joseph Vero. But
you should talk to Joseph if you get a chance. I'll introduce you if you want. I'm not like super buddy, like closest best friends, but I talk to Joseph now and then. He's great. He's absolutely that kind of guy.
I've been following him not too long. I was kind of behind the horse on that one and kind of missed out on all his stuff. And then I really started just seeing it everywhere. I was like, who is this guy?
It happened fast, to be fair.
It did. And, I didn't know anything about him. Well, I started following him and looking at his stuff. I like his designs, especially the Warncliffe design.
Yeah, the Axon.
Yeah. So, and I joined in a few of his live streams on Instagram and just kind of listened to him. And I listened to his live stream the other night. He did for maybe 5 minutes. I think he was talking to Ben.
Yeah, Ben Peterson.
I always call him Ben Banter, but that's not his last name.
It's close enough. Everyone knows what you mean.
So, but yeah, just listening to him talk about his work and hearing what other people have to say about him. He seems kind of like Ramon and how he'll take the time to talk to people and engage with you. And I see him, like, there's been a few people Maybe one was your post where it was one of his and the Yeager.
Yeah, that was mine. I put the Axon and the Jaeger side by side.
Yeah, and I think
They're like best friend knives. They're perfect together.
yeah, I think he commented on it, and then I commented on it, and just seeing, I was like, this guy, I feel like he'll be around for a while compared to some other people I've seen try to get into just the knife game period that don't really engage.
Yeah.
And that has a lot to do with it, and we keep coming back to it, but I mean, that's pivotal in any business. It doesn't matter what it is,
Right. Well, you can't really be a maker long term and not pay any attention to the business side of it. You have to, if that's the way you are, you got to have someone help you with it, or it's just like you're the luckiest person in the world if it works out and you don't handle business well.
Yeah. And it's, the way social media is these days. And as much as I like to complain about how Instagram is now, if it wasn't for Instagram, I would not have this business. It's plain and simple. It would not have happened without Instagram. Period. There's no way around it. And I can't even really include Facebook into that because I didn't really start my Facebook group until 18 months ago, maybe. The Facebook group hasn't been around that long, and it was a very minimal engagement. And thankfully the productions really helped my group out a lot, which has in turn helped out business for me. I'm getting a lot of people in the group, people buying and selling in the group, and people asking me stuff, and it got to the point to where now I've got 2 guys that are admins in the group helping me out, and that have become friends just through knives. I don't know them. I've never met one of them. Another guy is a friend of a friend who lives here locally, and I've met him in person. But other than that, I mean, it's the community around knives and the social media, and especially with Instagram and Facebook, and now even with YouTube, like with what you're doing, and even like with Yeager-m knives. I have to give a lot of credit to him too. I learned how to make folders from Yeager-m knives YouTube videos.
Yep.
And
I got into the hobby of knives, like deep into like collecting, buying, selling, trading. All of that was from researching a knife, stumbling into knife YouTube. And then it's like, whoa, there's a whole world here. I've been into knives my whole life, but I didn't know any of this existed,
Yeah, and then guys out there doing the reviews on them, like Frunky was real big early on, and he's kind of had to focus on brain surgery more than knives, which is understandable. But like guys like Nick Shabazz, and I don't really get on YouTube much. I just don't have the time to watch. But I mean, guys like him, and just it's crazy, and it's pouring over into Reddit, and Reddit's getting to be pretty big. And I was talking to Zach Cooper from Knife Joy a week or so ago about that, and how Reddit has gotten pretty big. And I've had a few people find me on Instagram or my website and message me and stuff because they saw somebody post one of them on the Reddit EDC page.
Yep.
And I looked at it the other day, and it's like 10,000 members in there or something now. It's crazy. And he was telling me, he's like, you really should get in there and start posting stuff. People that I've seen post your work in the comments on it, it's, to me, it was a little intimidating on the Reddit side because of how toxic it can be.
And it's so different too. The way everything is plated is different, and the etiquette.
That's the only reason why I really haven't ventured over there, maybe it's because I'm thin-skinned a little bit. I don't want to deal with the stupid comments, kind of like Frunky did a review on my Warthog prototype custom, and I really didn't even look at the comments because I know how toxic YouTube comments can be.
It's my favorite part. Yeah.
And I've kind of learned to brush it off now, but early on, like negative stuff like that kind of got to me personally. It's like, I'm putting everything I have into this, and then some jackass behind his computer that's never made anything in his life is going to complain about a little bit of a texture difference or something, not matching, like, it got to me. And I've kind of learned to brush it off now, and almost say that I've gained more confidence, because it's me, it's my name on there.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want some half-ass product out there,
You're unapologetic about making the things that are your vision to make. And
I know, and people see something that's like, well, I can't believe you did that, or this blah blah blah, which it doesn't really happen, but sometimes early on people would say something, and it's like, I'm doing the best I can. I'm not this other person that has been doing this for 30 years and has all this expertise and knowledge and machining and equipment experience and the actual equipment to do it. I go back and look at my early folders, like a guy said something about doing whatever he asked me about on a custom. I was like, I did that on one and I hated it. I go back and look at some of my early customs, and it's kind of like, man, that was terrible. But at the time, it was the best I could do.
Well, and that's a good thing, because that means you're progressing as a maker and your work is getting better. Like, I've had a number of people, because the space that I dwell in right now is YouTube content creation, right? There's a lot of people who think about making a YouTube, and they'll ask me, like, how should I do it? What camera do I need? Like, what are these things that I need to get to make it happen? And one of the things that before, like when I was starting my channel, I had, for like a moment, I was overthinking it, and I was just making it more complicated than it needed to be. And my wife said, you should look back in a month or 6 months or in a year at your first video you made, and you should cringe and you should want to delete it, because if you don't, then you're waiting too long. And like the progress happens from doing it, not from making sure you're perfectly set up before you start. Like at a certain point, you just got to jump in and start going with it. And so, like, of course your knives from 60 knives ago aren't the same as the knife that you made today. Like that progress is what happens, especially in the custom world. And that's almost like, I don't know, part of me thinks if I got a low number custom from a maker, it would kind of be like getting an older sports car, where it's like, has some imperfections, but that's kind of what gives it character, and it's a low number. And I knew that. Like, that's okay.
And I was talking to a guy the other day that got a custom secondhand, and he's like, I like this a lot. He got a mini. He's like, I like this a lot, but I'd rather have a full size. He's like, so I might end up selling this soon if I can find a full size. He's like, I've gone back through your page, and all the customs have been numbered. And he's like, I want to find Yeager, 14, 15, 21, 42, and what. He's like, I want to find them and in this order. And I said, well, I'll be honest with you. Prior to like number 20, like that number 21 and prior, I was like, I put my heart and soul into all of them. But I was like,
things were different.
Things really changed, and I really figured out better ways to do everything after about number 20. It's like I said, I've never had anybody say they're functionally terrible or anything, but the quality of what I'm putting out now will be more evident in like number 20 plus, you know? So maybe don't venture in the earlier ones, but here on forward, I think you'll be happy, you know, but and I've seen some of the early ones that have come back for little tweaks, or somebody just wanted it cleaned up and sharpened because they wanted to sell it or whatever. And some of them impressed me, which was good. Like, okay, that wasn't so bad. But with all these guys that are waiting on my book orders, a few guys have joked around and they've both said the same thing, is saying, well, the longer it takes you to get to mine, the better it'll be.
Yeah.
Like, that's the plan. I mean, people message me and say you're getting better with each one. And I'm like, thank you, because
yeah, that's
the plan. And I try to get better with each one, and I hope people notice it. I don't know where my peak is yet. Hopefully it takes me a long time to find it. Hopefully I peak the day before I die, because I don't want to.
You don't want to decline.
Yeah. And I've seen that happen to some people, and they have the knowledge and the skills and the stuff to do better, but it's like they get to a point and they just kind of hit autopilot.
Yeah,
and
cruise control.
They can sell anything that they make, and they choose to just make easy, quick stuff and pop it out and sell it. And if that works for them, hey, that's awesome. If they're putting all the quality that they can into it, and they just don't want to spend all the time on extra fancy stuff or custom orders, they just want to do simple, user-friendly stuff, more power to them. There's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
But I'd rather myself try to keep pushing the limits and trying new things, so I've made thumb studs before. They came out like garbage because I didn't have a lathe. Well, I go buy some Zerk thumb studs, but I opted to make my own Zerk thumb studs on this lathe that I've got now, that took me 4.5, 5 hours to make, when I could go buy 2 of them for like $10.
Right.
But I'd rather do it myself, just to say that I can. And it adds that extra little touch that I think people like, and I don't buy really the same thing with the pivot screws. These are blank pivot screws when I get them. I have to dimple them and chamfer them and stuff. Whereas early on, I was using just the pre-made ones from Tie Connector.
Mm-hmm.
And there's nothing wrong with the guys that use those. It's fine, but I'd prefer to put my own touch on it, and that way people can see just the pivot and collar setup on my knife and say, yep, that's one of Brian's.
Yeah.
And know that it's mine, and not try to second guess on, well, that looks kind of like it could be something else, but which most custom guys, their blades and their profiles, you can tell immediately. But I just want to have each little detail my own.
Yeah, I think that's commendable. I think it like I said at the very beginning, that's like, there's layers and levels to how custom a custom knife is, and you're trying to put as many layers on the cake as you can of how custom it is, and that's awesome. Like, the more custom, the better when you're playing custom knife game,
Yeah, and it reflects on the price. I mean, my base model is a couple $100 more now than what they used to be.
Yeah.
Because my base model includes a lot more of that custom touch than it used to. Every little thing like that adds more time to it, so it takes longer. It's more time I put into it. It's going to cost a little more. And people understand that. And I don't think I've ever had anybody question a price on anything. And as much as I stress out over, am I overcharging? Am I undercharging? Just is this fair? I've never really had anybody complain
Yeah.
about what they paid for anything. So that's a good thing. But, I still want to try to give people as much as I can for the money. And I think that goes back to the communications, a lot of it. They getting pictures of the build as I'm working on it. That all goes into it. And you buy the maker as much as you buy the knife. And
Yeah.
I'm sure you've heard that before. And I try to give everybody the best experience they can. And people want to come back and get something else. And they're fine with waiting a year and a half. A guy told me the other day, I was talking to him about doing some leather sheaths for these chucks.
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, well, I'm not really doing a whole lot of orders because I got so backed up and I don't want to get that backed up again. I was like, yeah, I know what you mean. It happens. I'm backed up myself. He's like, yeah, but you've kind of earned that right. I was like, I don't think I have, but I get what you're saying.
The evidence is there. Yeah.
And I was like, I kind of get it because nobody really complains when I say, hey, sorry, I'm behind, but I still hate it that I'm this far behind. But like I said, people understand. And 3 months at home during lockdown with 3 kids in tow and your wife still has to go to work really cuts into your shop time.
For sure.
So, but it's been fun.
Yeah. So one thing that I've heard, I don't know that I've heard it so much as I kind of perceive it would be a thing. At least I can't remember where I've heard it if I did, but I feel like it could be a concern for some custom makers who are considering or are being told that it's a good idea to also play the production knife game, that they'd be hesitant because they think it would diminish the amount of custom knives that they would sell. Do you find, like, having made a couple runs of Yeagers now, has it decreased or increased people's want to get on your books for custom Yeagers? Like, if you could open 10 Yeager spots, would you have a problem filling them more so because you've made production versions, or does that raise awareness and help it?
People that say it hurts your customs, fake news. It's only helped. Because what it's done is gotten more people introduced into my work.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot of different people out there and different levels of collecting. And like you said, you're kind of in this RIAT custom maker OEM range type stuff. And you're probably, 300, 600 at most range.
Right about, yeah.
A lot of guys kind of fondle with that area, then kind of creep on up into customs. And then there's guys that just start off all the way out in customs. There's a good bit of people on my custom books that probably don't own a single production knife. And that's what they like. And I lost my train of thought, but yeah, it's only increased the want of. I'll have people saying, all right, now that I've got my Yeager-m, I need a custom one.
Right.
And people have said, other makers have said, I'll never do a version of a custom in a production because they're worried about it hurting it or whatever their reasoning may be. I get it, but then again, I'm proof that it doesn't do anything for you as long as you make it a enough tweaks to know that it's a production.
Right. Yeah.
There's
I think for me, like I've had your production version now, and I've thought your Jaeger customs were really cool from the first time that I saw one on Instagram, probably 18 months ago, a custom. And I saw a guy who had a folder and he had a fixed blade Jaeger. And I was like, I need both of those. And I was like, oh, they're way too much for me. But
yeah,
now that I have this, it's like, maybe a Jaeger spot would be awesome. It's like because I love it so much. And so I think the same thing with like Berg blades. The first knife I had of his was an iron pup
yeah,
back in their flippers. And then I had one of his production golem or the slim as well.
yeah,
And then having the slim was like, ooh, it'd be rad to get a custom golem, which is what that knife is based off of. And
yeah,
like it for me, it doesn't in any way occupy the same space where it's like because I have this now I would never need a custom. Like there's still different knives and I know it. And I think when you're deep enough in the knife game to be playing in this range or in the custom range, you know the minutia of the differences between a custom knife and a production knife and what goes into it and like what makes it worth it, because that's a lot of intangibles that
right,
people who aren't in the hobby definitely wouldn't understand. It's like anything that's collectible or
yeah.
difficult to get. The value is in the intricacy. So yeah, I like that for you. It's literally just seemed to, at least what I've perceived in the last like 6 months, where I've kind of been watching what's been happening with you. It seems like there's kind of a fire lit under your brand because of the production knives.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. It's done nothing but help, and there's a big market out there, and it's apparent just with like the Spyderco group. I mean, that's all those people will buy. They won't stray from Spyderco's, and they especially won't stray from that $250 max price range. And there's a lot of people in this $300 price range that maybe can't afford a custom, or they just don't see the value of 4 times as much money for a
Right.
knife that still will do the same thing. And I
Yeah.
get it. I mean, it took me a long time to spend the money on a custom myself. Even though I'm making these and selling these $1,000 customs, it took me a while before I finally bit the bullet. And this is the second one I've gotten, but this is
Ooh.
uh, actually the first custom book ordered um, knife that I've ever gotten. And it took me a while to spend that much money. And like
Yeah.
I said before, I had a decent amount of knives, and I kind of started off like most people do with, a cheap, almost, $50 knife, and then I kind of worked my way up, and got a little bit more and a little bit more and a little bit more, and I'm making them on the side, but some of my play money was coming from making knives, and I'm kind of gradually on this increase of what most collectors do, whether they're making them themselves or not. I was just like anybody else. I have a passion for collecting and buying and new knives just as much as the next person.
Mhm.
So the same thing with Berg. I've never had the chance or the financial stability at the time when I could buy a custom from him. But me and him have talked for years,
Mhm.
just as makers, and become friends. And I've, unfortunately, some of the stuff I had to sell was ones I got from him. but I was buying the stuff from him to get something from him,
Mhm.
and that just not even because I really, really, really wanted that knife. I liked the knife. I wanted the knife, but I wanted to support him
Right.
more than I wanted the knife. So, and there's a lot more people willing to do that at $300 than $1,000.
Yeah.
And, like you said, which you got that Yeager-m, and it's like beforehand, 18 months ago, you're like, I wouldn't spend $1,000 on that Yeager. And then now you've gotten the Yeager-m, like, well, I kind of
If I was gonna pick $1,000 custom,
you know,
you know.
and that's happened with a lot of people. And like I said, the customs have worked well for me, and the productions have just kind of accentuated it, because as many people asking me about more Yeager-m's, I get just as many people asking me when I'm going to open my books again.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, that time frame is way longer than getting more Yeager-m's in.
Yeah.
But I don't know why somebody in my position wouldn't try to get into production.
Yeah. I kind of look at it like, if you look at BMW, right? They make the 3 Series. They make a lot of cars, but if you just look at the 3 Series, the pinnacle of the 3 Series is the M3. And that's a relatively expensive car. You can be 80 grand into an M3 easily. Like, add some options, you're touching 100. And it's a lot of car. Not necessarily saying it's worth it or not worth it. I've driven M3s, love them. They're fantastic behind the wheel. But the 330i existing doesn't poach any sales from the M3. It doesn't take a single M3 buyer and make BMW lose money by them switching themselves onto the 330i. That's not happening. Maybe there might be a few once you start talking like 340i with M Sport, and it's someone who like just barely might be able to afford an M3, but it's like they're right on that cusp. Then that 340i M Sport is kind of like the Yeager-m. I think it's like as nice as you can kind of get right now for that production level without going full M, like, and I think as long as, like, the only way I can see that becoming dangerous for a knife designer is, and it might even not be for certain ones, but like for someone in your position who's making nice custom knives that are expensive and should be, and is now making production knives that are nice and are less expensive, but still relatively expensive in the realm of people buying a knife to put in their pocket.
Right.
The only danger I see in that is if you were to create like a $70 budget knife that feels much less true to what your work is, just to put your design on something. Like if you have Gerber make a Brian Brown design and it's an 8CR and it's got blade play and like it's really heavy and full steel like frame, like whatever that would end up looking like, I feel like that could be a perception thing where it's like, oh, this knife isn't very good. Now I wonder if his custom is very good. But it's less about the design, it's about how good the build is. So as long as you're having the knife built well and it fits for like your identity and you're happy with this knife, you feel like it is a good reflection of your knife, then it's not going to stop the M3 buyer from buying the custom,
And not the only thing, but the other thing that these guys, I think, sometimes are scared of, in which I've heard it mentioned on like Mark of the Maker and stuff when they've had these conversations, is how good these productions are at these price points.
Mm-hmm.
If you're not careful, and this was the main thing that worried me more so than just people not wanting to buy them.
Will it be nicer than the custom?
Exactly. And it could happen. And I've handled some custom knives out there that cost 4 times as much as that Yeager-m. that the action was terrible. You know, I'm not even talking drop shut. That's stupid to conversation to get into. I won't even go into those conversations with people on drop shut.
Yeah.
But I mean, just smooth opening, smooth closing, not gritty, not tight, not binding anywhere, you know.
Centered, simple things.
Yeah, you know, and stuff like that. And then you get one of these for as good as they are. And I've had conversations with some collectors that have some super expensive stuff from really well-known makers, and they're like getting in some of these production runs like mine, and they're like, I don't know why I spend this much money on customs. You know, and I've heard that from, you know, it's kind of, you know, just a joke to an extent on why they're saying that.
Yeah.
But to an extent, it's almost true, unfortunately, with some makers. And that was the one thing that did kind of bother me early on was, are my customs still going to be viewed as better than these? And thankfully, I think I've avoided that. And
when I look at the pictures of the customs you're working on that you do put on Instagram, there's no question in my mind that they're way more special than the production knives. The way that you're finishing those things, the little details you're touching, that's not production knife stuff. And so I think you're pretty safe there.
Yeah, and it's just trying to stay ahead of the curve on both sides of it. You know, I want to keep the production stuff up to par with what other guys are doing, especially with guys like Vero coming in and just blowing the game up. I mean,
yep. I did the math with Jason. Once he gets the knives that are currently pre-ordered delivered, it'll be 3,000 knives delivered so far, which for a brand new guy, it's a lot of knives.
Been around for what, less than 2 years?
Yeah, like a year and a half, I think.
And that's awesome, you know. And in that time frame, I've done 450. And I've been
which is still a lot more than some others. It's all relative.
That's a lot longer than he has. And, you know, not complaining or talking bad about him. It's just, it's insane what he's doing. But I don't know. It's wild, you know, seeing what he did so fast, and people love his work. You know, and it's exciting to see people like that come up and have these new designs and people follow him, and he's got a crazy following now.
Yeah.
So we always keep going back to him.
I've noticed in almost every one of my podcasts, regardless of who I'm talking to, Vero comes up. And I think that it honestly makes sense. I'll do an episode with Joseph soon, and maybe then I can stop having him come up so much. I can just be like, watch the episode. But I mean, in the year 2020, I think arguably in a lot of ways, he was kind of like the success story of at least a newcomer in that year. And so it makes sense that he's a talking point. With how many knives he's delivered, a lot of people have gotten to handle them. And so it's not just like there's 100 really cool knives that came out and everyone seems to like them, but you can only trust that 100 people are telling the truth about whether they're good. It's a big sample size now. And
and seeing stuff like that with him, I really like seeing, because that's good for us, because it means there's a customer base out there because it kind of, you know, he was new. He came out with some new radical designs, you know, just some design features that nobody had ever done before. You know? And it took me probably a solid month seeing, I'm going to get it all wrong, but I think that the Axon, does it have just the milled slot on just the one side? What's the one that's just got the milled slot on just the one side of it?
So his first knife was the Impulse. This is a mini Impulse, and this one just has the slot on
Right.
the.
And so I'd seen pictures of them, and I'm like, it was kind of confusing to me at first because I was like, well, it's a flipper, but then I saw some of them had that slot on it, but then I noticed it was only on one side. I was like, okay, it makes sense. Most people want to flick it.
Mhm.
You don't need a full through hole.
And it keeps the show side perfectly sterile and beautiful, and yeah.
You don't need it. So, and people have flocked to him, which is awesome. And so that kind of gives me ease on wanting to come out with like a new folder design of people like, are people going to want something different? That because this Raptor design, if you go back and find it, and hopefully, like I said, these prototypes come up soon, it's completely different from a Yeager.
Mm-hmm.
Completely different. You wouldn't think it was a design that I would put out, because of how different it is. Granted, like I said earlier, it kind of compares to some of the customs, but if you're mainly just familiar or somebody who's just familiar with my production stuff, it's
out of left field.
It really is, because it's more of like a modified drop point, super slim, sleek, not a, rectangle,
Right.
essentially, and that's what's so funny to me about these is when it comes down to it, it's a brick.
Yeah, but there's subtlety all over it.
I know, and it's just,
if it was a silhouette and you couldn't see any of the stuff happening on it, then yeah, it's pretty rectangular. But when you look at this knife, especially the inlay version, like I've got, I mean, the lines are broken up in such a way. It's like,
and then
it's like robotic in the sense that it's very like kind of ruggedly like cornered off.
I like it.
Yeah.
Because of that angular everything on it. And that's one reason why I kind of didn't want to contour the scale on these, is because everything on it is kind of angular.
Yeah.
But
But
then
you've got subtle curves. Like there's a little bit of a curve.
well, and then I go
back, and then
the backspacer on it.
Yeah. Which I always notice because I'm in the habit oftentimes of setting my knife down like this.
I do it all the time.
And it's like it'll stay if I'm careful, but it'll also fall over a lot of the time.
I've seen some guys post up pictures of their stuff like lined up in a tray, and I'll get tagged in it, and it's really easy to see where mine is because it's like leaned over on the side of the tray. Yeah. on the wall there.
You're always that wonky one.
I'm always the one that's kind of cocked over because it won't sit. And whenever I go hang out with like some knife buddies and stuff, and we're all hanging out and got a bunch of stuff on the table, people are setting them all on the spine, especially if there's no flipper.
Yeah.
Everybody just kind of sets them on the spine, and then they go and do it, and it falls over. And then if they haven't noticed it before I hand it, oh, wait a minute, that's different.
Yeah. So on your customs of the Yeager, do more people do no flipper or do more people do with a flipper?
Non-flipper.
Non-flipper.
I hate making flippers.
I was all for it. I wanted this one mostly because if there's a hole, I'm going to middle finger flick it almost every time. It's just my favorite way to open a knife. But now that I have this one, I'm especially glad because you can choke up. And if the flipper tab's there, then that's not, I imagine.
Was not near as streamlined flipper wise. It's a little big, it's a little clunky, which they made how I designed it. And credit to Riyadh again on their design. I don't even have a flipper here, but it's about half that size, and it's actually you probably won't even be able to see it.
It's positioned a little higher, right?
They actually changed the geometry slightly. And so it's a tad higher, but then they kind of chopped it at an angle, and you can see it in the picture. So it's a lot sleeker and it's not as big, and it works beautifully. And I almost kept a flipper full titanium over the non-flipper just because I like the flipper so much. And the way the flippers versus the non-flippers, just that little ting you get on that thin hollow grind, it's more apparent on the flipper versions
Oh,
than the non-flippers. And I think it's because the way you hold it and you're not on the lock bar as much. I think part of the lock bar slapping over behind the blade, it kind of resonates through the blade, and that real thin hollow grind kind of
Swing.
stings.
Yeah.
So you can kind of hear it on them more so on the titanium. The titanium flippers sound the best. Oh, it's weird. I never thought I'd have so many people tell me how much they enjoyed their knife because of how it sounds.
The acoustics of it make a difference.
And I've noticed it on my customs. Some of my customs frame locks, especially versus liner locks, sound different.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you get a lot higher pitched tink from like a frame lock than you do a liner lock because of those thicker frames. A liner lock is kind of more of just like a dull thud.
Right. Especially if it's in like micarta or G10 and that dampens the sound.
So even like on the customs, like with this one, with this koa, with this wood on it, you flip it open and it's just kind of a tick where it locks up. But then like when you hear it hit the stop pin in there, it's just kind of a thud versus a whack. And these they whack so hard and you just get that tink to it.
Yeah, it's a little tuning fork.
And that's full credit to Riyadh on that awesomely thin, tall, hollow grind. So I'm hoping that the way I did the grind on these, the design for the Raptor, if they can pull off how I drew it, it won't really have that sound to it like that, but it's going to be a big aggressive hollow on those. It's going to be awesome. If you can't tell, I'm excited about those Raptors, and
I'm excited now too.
I'm itching for these prototypes to show up. So they talked about it on their podcast and stuff too, but the Millie Group guys, Jason and Tom, want to get back on over there and have me on when those prototypes show up. So
yeah, you're welcome to come here and show them too. I'm happy to do that.
Yeah, I might have to see how many I get in, or when I get them in. After, if I got time before pre-orders, I might have to send you one if I can.
That'd be awesome. I'm sure people would love to see it.
Depending on time frames, but yeah, you know, I'm putting all my eggs in one basket with those almost, as I'm really excited about them, and I want people to know about them instead of getting lost in translation. You know, I've already got a new graphic for a new t-shirt design, actually.
Oh, no way.
For it, just for the Raptors. And
that's killer.
I'm excited about them. I'm trying to do something different with them, with having, you know, the t-shirt doing it, you know, having a graphic for them specifically and stuff like that. And I'll do like I did. I don't know if you got it with yours being secondary. Whenever I sent all these out, I sent stickers with them.
Mine had the sticker in the pouch, yes, yeah. Which I was very glad, because that stuff makes me happy.
Yeah, and a lot of people like that kind of stuff, and that's one thing that with each production run I've kind of changed up, is trying to up just the packaging a little bit. You know, I don't want to dump a bunch of money and have to charge people more for packaging. People like packaging, but there's a line there.
It's a delicate balance, yeah.
You know, so I think it's cool. I would rather have 5 stickers than a fancy box. I'm never going to put my knife back in that box.
Yeah, I just hang on to the box in case I ever sell the knife.
I do too.
It's in my closet, yeah.
But I don't care about the box. I'd rather have a bunch of stickers. You can't really see them, but on these cabinets back here, all you can only see the one big sticker there, but those 4 cabinets this way, I have 4 more that are completely covered.
Now I got to send you a care package of my stickers.
Oh, I love it. I've got all my toolboxes, stickers all over them. And so whenever I did these, a guy had done the graphic that I use for my Instagram logo or a profile pic right now, that bee that's kind of like a dripping.
Yeah.
He drew that up for me just kind of out of the blue, which was awesome. And I loved the graphics so much, I went and had more stickers made up and put my regular bee sticker in the box, 2 different versions of the one that he drew up for me, plus the knife sticker, a business card, and a COA that was a business card size for all, and then they all matched what you got. And it was a bit of a chore. You know, it was a lot of work. It took me and the wife a good solid 2 days just to get
it all sorted.
just to get that. So, you know, I went through and I sorted out each pre-order, and I had their everything in the box, everything in the bubble wrap pack ready to go, minus the knife. That way, when the knife showed up, all I had to do was match the order, and they already had their matching COA, matching sticker, plus the other 3 stickers that I threw in there.
Yeah.
And, you know, then the zipper pouch that they came in had my logo on them.
That pouch is great.
And I prefer the pouches. I've seen like a lot of guys doing the box with the foam cutouts and stuff in them, and they're cool, they're nice, but I'd rather have the pouch and the stickers. You know, the gold embossed boxes and everything, they're nice, but I'd rather give more knife for what you're spending than more packaging, you know.
Yeah.
I like the packaging. A lot of people do these unboxing videos and they focus on packaging. I'm not buying a package, I'm buying a knife, you know.
Yeah, so it's funny. I talk to people on both sides of that, where I'm kind of in the middle, where like if I get a knife that's in really nice packaging, I notice it for sure. Like it's cool for that moment that I'm unboxing it. Recently, I got a Wirtz made fixed blade. I don't know if you're familiar with Randy Wirtz, really cool fixed blade maker. And his packaging is like some of the most well thought out, really cool laser cut foam box, like really, really next level nice. And it's like, that's really cool when you're getting the knife, but it also only goes so far. And so if I start to get a whiff of like, this knife could be nicer, maybe if you weren't using such nice packaging, or it would have saved me like 20 or 30 bucks because you went so overboard on packaging, then like
it all
count me out.
Money.
Yeah.
And that's like with like I said, with the stickers and stuff. It's not free, and stickers really aren't cheap.
Right.
But I felt that the pricing I had sold them at, and they were going to be getting the pouch, and I was like, I need to do something else. You know, I felt like my customers needed just a little something extra.
Yeah.
The pouch is cool. It's nice to have. The knife, you know, that's the main thing they want. The business card and a sticker. I was like, I got to do something a little extra. So I did the other stickers. I don't think I did any kind of COAs on the first run. So I did the COA cards, 2 different variations of whether you got the titanium or the inlay, you know. And then that was another thing of kind of having to teach myself was the knife stickers. I drew those myself. I ended up learning Photoshop, you know, sitting down at night again,
just figuring it out.
You know, I wanted to do that. I was like, I thought that's cool, but I didn't want to pay somebody to have to draw up the graphics for each one. I was like, there's got to be a way I can take the 2D design that I already have that's going to match it
identically
anyway, because it's the 2D file that was used. I was like, so I've got to be able to, this can't be that hard. So I did it, and I sent them to a guy to do the stickers for me. And he's a big beef guy, which is awesome, which makes it even better. And I got those in, and I was super ecstatic about that because I thought that was the coolest thing to send with them, was something I hadn't seen anybody do before. I've seen some guy, I think like Oz Machine Company does them with some of his customs, and I've seen other guys have some made, just to send to people.
But the only other like production knives that I've gotten where they have stickers of the knife, or at least of other knives from that company, are ProTech. They do like, but I don't think they do it because a lot of the knives are sold through retailers. It's not like every ProTech box has one. It's the few times where like they've let me purchase a knife a little early to be able to review it. And then the box I get from them, there's like a bunch of knife stickers that are models that they make, which is kind of cool.
Yeah. And so that was something I was, one of those little things I was trying to think of that was different, and so with the Raptor, I'll end up doing the same thing. And the graphic will be on the COA card that matches the knife. And now I'm going to try to, I got to figure out the logistics of making it work on my end, but of doing the t-shirts with the blade. And, do people want to wait till they get their knife to get their shirt, or do I send out the shirt beforehand?
Yeah, I don't know. I think it's fun to have stuff like if you have pre-ordered the knife successfully and you've got it coming, and you can get a shirt too, then like having the shirt while you wait, it probably makes the waiting a little bit sweeter.
That's what I was thinking would be pretty cool.
Yeah.
Being able to have the shirt, have the knife, and then, all right, shirts I can get done in 2 or 3 weeks, and then get those sent out to people. So that's another one of those late night playing around on the website things of feeling out the logistics on how that works through the website, of having one order with 2 things on it and having
that are shipping separately
together, and making it not extremely time consuming, so it's fun stuff like that keeps me up at night.
That's good. Well, I mean, I think it's cool that I can literally tell you say it's fun stuff like that, and it is work, but I can tell you actually do get a kick out of it. And that's
I know how the customer feels waiting. I've been the customer, with other makers and other companies, and so I put myself in their shoes on when I'm sending stuff to people, and even like with these bit drivers, it's something it's cool. It's a handmade product from me that's, $150 really at most. And it's something inexpensive to get from me that's been handmade. And so I'm sending those out with stickers and stuff. And I bought, a pack of like 200 eyeglasses, just soft cases, to put drivers in, instead of just throwing them in a bag, like just a Ziploc, like even a fancy Ziploc from like Uline or somewhere. Like I got to do something a little different, people, I'm not going to get them embroidered or anything, but I mean, a nice little soft case that you get, it's basically $100 screwdriver. So
yeah, it seems like it's like a more premium product when it's plated.
Yeah. So,
that's awesome, man. So we're coming up on the 3-hour mark, which always astounds me. I have a question for you that I'm in a group chat that I really like on Instagram. I'm on a few, but I mentioned to some of the guys in one of my group chats today that we'd be talking tonight because several of them have the Yeager as well. And we talk about the knife a lot in there. And I don't know if you're familiar with my buddy MB Wild, but he's on Instagram. That's his handle. Really cool dude. He does like long form kind of written reviews on Instagram. Really
His,
great photos.
oh, sorry to cut you off. One of his pictures is the group banner photo right now.
There you go.
I
He's
love it.
awesome.
Yeah.
So he came up with a really good question that typical for Will. His brain is much more developed than mine, and he thinks of really cool things. So he had a really interesting question that he wanted me to relay to you. And so the question simply is, what have you learned from making knives, like from being a custom maker, that surprised you? Like something that you never would have thought before making knives would be either an obstacle you overcame or just a lesson you learned in doing it. Like what's something that people wouldn't expect you've learned from making through knives that you've had to learn?
That's a tough one.
Yeah,
That's a really good question.
he's got a brain on him, right?
Yeah. Um, Man, honestly, it's probably going to sound cheesy, but really it's if you really want to do something and do it well and enjoy it, if you just stick with it and you put your mind to it and you just do your best and you keep doing your best, you'll succeed at it. You know, because like I said early on, with even 3 months before I decided to go full time, if you asked me if I'd ever do this as a full time job, I'd have told you no.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I mean, just keeping at it and trusting yourself and just giving it your best. I mean, really, that's what it is. And people can tell when you're doing it the right way and giving it your best shot. You know, people notice that. And I feel like people notice that with me, that I don't cut corners on anything. I've got a drawer full of scrap to prove it.
Yeah.
And I don't want to ever send out anything half-assed. So over the years of just second guessing myself and wondering if this would ever work, you know, and not even being able to jump full, you know, head first into this, you know, I still took baby steps into the full-time thing, you know, with working with that other guy for 6 months and realized real quick I didn't have enough time to work with him, you know, and you just kind of gotta, you know, trust your instincts and go at it full on and give it your best. Because I've seen guys try to do it, and I've had people message me saying, in no less words, basically, how can I make money making knives? I don't know. I didn't get in this to make money.
Yeah.
I got in this because I like it. You know, the production stuff, to an extent, I got in to make money, but I also got into it to expand my brand and expand my reach to people who can't afford customs, you know.
Yeah.
So it's just that's a good question. I like that question.
I like your answer. I think it ties a bow on a lot of what your comments have been tonight, where I think yours is a story of persistence as a maker. Like you, from the way that you kind of got into it by just like taking months to make one knife and then realizing some people were willing to buy them from you. And then like you've taken it a step at a time, and you've had now it's been years that you've been doing it, and your story isn't like overnight all of a sudden you blew up. Instead, it's been that steady build over time, and you've been calculated and you've been thinking about it, and you put a lot of thought into the stickers that go into your packaging and like the little things that kind of add up to the sum total of what your brand is. And I think that's really cool. So I appreciate that answer because I think
Yeah.
it's genuine.
Yeah. And you know, it's some people have the luxury to be able to go out and buy all this equipment and start off.
Mhm.
And I've seen guys go and get into this as a hobby because they like it. And I've trashed a lot of knives, like I said, and it's taken me a long time to get to where I am, but I'm glad it happened that way versus peaking and then maybe people realizing he's not as good as people thinks he is. It's all hype,
Mm.
you know, and you know, you see guys come up, whether it's on the custom side or the production side, come up really fast and be really successful. And, you know, especially with the custom side, because it gets to me more sometimes than the production stuff. Like I'll see somebody that has an auction up and it's like $4,000 or $5,000 and it's nice, but as a maker, I can see the little flaws and it's not really, you know, just the little inconsistencies or something, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not saying this has happened before. It's just, you know, an example. But then I'll post up an auction that I think is way nicer and it sells for less than half of what this one sold for.
Mm.
You know, so then you get some jealousy there just because that person is hot right now.
It's a natural human reaction, I think. Yeah.
Yeah. And, you know, you want to be like, well, why mine's just as good. Why didn't mine sell for as much as that one did? You know, what I feel like it should have or should have sold for more. But I can tell myself, and I've learned over the years that that's not what it's all about. It's being consistent. You know, am I happy with what I'm doing? Am I happy doing this? Or do people like what I'm doing? Can I, you know, it comes down to money too a lot of times. Can I pay my bills? Is this supporting my family? You know, and it is. And I had the best year I've ever had financially last year. In the midst of all this nonsense, that's the best year my wife and I have had since we've been married, you know, and like I said, I've never been the most popular at anything I've ever done, but it's the persistence is paying off now. And it's starting to come through to where people are getting my stuff and wanting my stuff on a regular basis. And I don't care if I sell out each run. You know, I'd love to sell out each run, but as long as I'm selling enough to keep making them and pay my bills and support the family and have a little bit of play money, I'm happy.
Yeah. I think that's cool. I think, again, drawing a parallel just because the framework of the way I view the world is oftentimes what I do. But sometimes I've had conversations with people about the way that I look at my channel because I am trying to build it just like you're trying to build your knife company.
Right.
But there's a method to it for me and kind of a amount of having to be delicate about the way I look at it and treat it because I think there's a value in like unapologetically doing it your way from the start, even if that's not the viral way that
Right.
makes you huge fast, because it's so much more sustainable long term. Like I've made, I'd have to count. I'm pretty sure I've probably hit 500 videos now, and my channel is about to be 1 year old. Like I make a lot of videos, but to me, it doesn't feel like that insane of an amount because I do it in such a way that to me feels natural and is sustainable. And if I had listened to the commenters early on who basically were telling me I was doing it wrong because I wasn't tabletop and because I was doing it a different way than was typical, then if I had switched and started doing it the way that commenters were telling me to do it, then I'd have burnt out a long time ago because I wouldn't want to do it that way. And so the advantage of letting the growth take its time while doing it the way you want to do it, I think is tremendous. And like, you sound like you're really good at trying hard to find that balance of limiting how much you're working so you don't burn out, making sure that you have the time for yourself. Like that all makes a ton of sense to me. This morning, I went on a little hike and I didn't bring a camera. I had a knife in my pocket and like it wasn't about content because I know for me, if every hike I go on, I'm only shooting content, hiking isn't fun anymore and I feel out of whack. Like
then hiking becomes a job.
yeah, so you got to take those steps to make it your process and do it your way. And the people then who follow along as you're doing that, way more devoted than if you're trying to do what you think the people want you to do. And I think that's commendable and I vibe with that, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Everybody's got their own way of doing things, like you said, and what works best for them doesn't work best for you. And you know, it's the same thing with me on my social media. Of I see guys doing like so much like in-depth build, you know, filming and stuff like that, and to me, sometimes it almost ends up more about the video than the product they're making.
Mm-hmm.
And they're just trying to make something cool so you see
For the content.
for the content, right?
Yeah.
So
Do it for the gram.
yeah, you know, and so I just kind of do my own, you know, I'll see what people do. You know, it's human nature to try to copy successful people. You know, you see people that are doing well or something, and I try to do the same thing, and it, whatever it may be, a lot of times it doesn't work out for me. You know, it's not my thing.
And the times when it does click, great. That's why we're programmed to do that, I think. But
Yeah.
too many people, even when it doesn't click, they're like, I have to push through everything that sucks because this is the way to get successful. Like there's not one way. Like find your way.
Yeah, and with like the whole business side of this, you know, it's like people are scared to talk about it, the financial side of stuff like this, but it's just like any other business, you know.
Yeah.
You're going to accrue debt. You're going to have issues. It's almost like an unheard of thing with the knife community, though, and full-time makers talking about, you know, it's almost like this all should be paid for, you know, which thankfully mine is now, but it wasn't always, you know.
Right.
I didn't just crap out money to pay for all this. I said it took me a long time to build up, and when I went full time, I mean, my first 6 months of the year, I was in the negative at the end of the year, technically on paper, because of all the stuff I had to buy for that first year going into business.
Mm-hmm.
And it just, you see people, it's just the same thing with life on Facebook and seeing other people doing this and that, and it's not real life.
It's curated.
There's nothing wrong with doing stuff your way that looks different, but you end up with the same result, but you just got there a different way. You know, it's taken me way longer to gain traction with my customs than other makers because I've never been to a show. I was working full time, and then by the time I got to doing this full time, I wasn't confident enough to want to have a table. I was too worried about it, and just the doubt creeped in on me too hard, and I decided not to have a table that second year being full time. And then 2020 rolls around, and I was like, I'm going to have a table this year. I'm doing it.
And then you can't.
And then it got shut down. So,
Yeah.
you know, and thankfully I've had success and not had to go to shows. But
Yeah.
this year I'm hoping to reach even a different customer base on the custom side, because there's a lot of custom buyers that want to be able to physically handle something.
Yeah. I do think it's interesting too, though, because I haven't been to Blade Show, and I sincerely hope to this year. Maybe I'll go to both. I don't know, but
Yeah.
I've been to California Custom Knife Show, and I'm not going to say any names because I genuinely don't remember any names. But I think sometimes there are makers who get a booth at a show because they think that's the answer to their success, and sometimes their knives actually aren't ready
Right.
to be next to the other people at that show, and it can be bad to try to have that exposure too early before you're ready. So I think it's like maybe you would have been ready a year earlier than you wanted to be, but you probably shouldn't have been at shows for 4 years. Like it's okay for it to take that time to be at the spot where now when you have a booth, like there's going to be excitement. Your booth is going to be busy, and you're not going to be sitting there. I've been at shows on the other side of a booth for like companies I've worked for when people don't want to see your stuff. And when people do come, you can tell they're kind of trying to get away pretty quick. That's not a confidence booster. Like I think that can be detrimental.
That's why I avoided it, is because I was scared that might happen.
Yeah. And I think you're probably being too modest. I don't think you specifically would have had a hard time at a show, but I think it illustrates the point that like taking the time necessary is worth it.
Yeah, I'd like to think that I wouldn't have an issue, and I look back and see other guys who were about the same point of their knife making journey as I was, that had a table and were extremely successful. And then that kind of made me look back on myself like, well, that was dumb. You should have had a table, because you probably would have been fine.
Mm-hmm.
But, it's it's back to the just doing things your way, and Instagram being so good for me, I didn't have to do shows, like even 10 years ago, anybody in the custom knife world like I'm in right now, you'd have to go to a show. You would not be successful. You'd have to go to 4 to 5 shows a year to make ends meet.
It was the option. Yeah.
There was, USN was probably around 10 years ago.
Yeah.
But it wasn't anywhere near what Instagram turned it into. Instagram really turned it around, or turned it not around, but turned it into what it is today. And
are you familiar with Dawson Knives? They make fixed blades. So they're out of Arizona. Yeah, so they're a really cool couple of dudes, and I think one of the daughters of the guy who started it works there as well, making knives. But I grew up going to a gun show in Ventura County, where I was raised, and they were there a lot of the time, and they were a knife company from Arizona. And it's funny the way you're talking about this, because thinking about it, in the late 90s, early 2000s, the way that they could sell knives was shows.
That's it. That was like, it. Mm-hmm.
And even if they had a website, no one would know to go to their website unless they'd seen them at a show.
Right.
It was the only way. So yeah, I think it's interesting how that's changed the dynamic so much to have social media as the tool.
Seeing just different perspectives from talking to some of these old guys at the shows, and people you've never heard of that go to Blade Show, and it's a 70-year-old guy sitting there with 30 knives on his table and minimum price of $1,500, and you go the next day and they're all gone.
Yeah.
Like, I've never even heard of this dude because he's not on Instagram. And then you try to ask them like, hey, are you on Instagram? They're like, I don't do that.
No, thank you.
They've been in their routine of going to shows and people know who they are. And And if you're an avid show goer, you've seen him, you know it's quality, it's the only way you're going to get it. So you better jump on it while you're at that show.
Mm-hmm.
And there's still a market for that. And that's one market I've never touched.
I think it's diminishing over time, but yes, it is still currently alive.
Yeah, I think you may change your mind if you ever get to a full-blown non-COVID Blade show, because
Totally
this
fair.
year, who knows what it's going to be like. But in years past, I mean, you go to the pit and to the hotel lobby of the convention center, and there's 2,000 people in there probably, if even, I don't even know what, maybe that's just a rough guess, but all these different groups of people just sitting there talking about knives.
Mm-hmm.
And you've got tables set out with just knives everywhere. And you go walk into the show, and it's so overwhelming the first time you go. Like, you can have your little map out, write down who you want to go find,
Mm-hmm.
just throw it in the trash. All you're going to do is end up wandering, trying to figure out where you are the whole time, because it's so overwhelming, and it takes you a full day just to get your bearings if you've never been. Like, I literally walked in the very first time I went, and my buddy hadn't gotten there yet, and I didn't really know anybody yet. And I showed up by myself. I walked in, and I just kind of looked around, and honestly had no idea what to do with myself. It's just so overwhelming. And in a good and exciting way, though. It's like there's so many knives here, and so much of a variation, from old case knives to $20,000 Michael Raymond, and you can touch all of them.
Yeah.
So, and then there's all kind of different shows out there. You've got Blade Show, which is for anything and everything. And then you've got like the USN show, which is pretty much, to me, it's kind of like the social media guys, guys like me who are doing customs, are pretty active on social media.
Mm-hmm.
They're well known through their Facebook groups and stuff like that. And it's a lot smaller, more intimate, close-knit show that you gotta kind of almost be known to get into it, it seems like, which I don't think is true, but it's just kind of what it seems. It's kind of like you got to be in the crowd to be able to get into the show as a maker, because who's in it already and how well known those people are. And it's completely different from Blade Show. And that's where I've heard you get a lot of your true collectors would prefer to go there than to Blade Show, because it's a lot smaller. You don't have to deal with the crowd. Whereas, like I said, you go to Blade Show, you can buy a $20 case knife, or you can go 3 tables down and there's Michael Raymond. It's wild.
Yeah.
So I hope shows never go anywhere. I'm going to Fort Worth next month to the ICE show.
I saw that one's happening.
And I don't have a table. I just decided to go because I need some face-to-face knife talk with people.
I bet. Yeah.
And I don't take stuff to sell because I don't have a table. I'll take my case with me with my stuff in it to show people that want to see something and handle something I made. And that's it. I just want to talk to people.
Yeah, participate.
It's how easy this has gotten us to 3 hours of just talking about stuff,
Right.
It felt like an hour.
It makes a difference. Yeah. To be able to have fun, enjoyable, real conversations.
Yeah, for sure.
That's honestly like, there's a number of motivators for this podcast, but the big selfish one is I just want to be able to have these fun, interesting conversations that are borderline face-to-face with people I want to talk to about interesting things. So yeah, I'm hoping I'll at least, if Blade Show West is actually in Southern California, like they're now saying it will be, definitely I'm in LA. That's not that'll be very easy for me. But I might even have to do Atlanta and just figure it out and fly out there and make it happen.
You won't regret going. It's amazing. This year could be a little weird. I don't know how it's all going to play out, but I mean, you're talking 10,000 people plus in a normal year that end up through there. It's wild. It's crazy. There's a ton of people there. I've met and made so many friends from Blade Show and been able to meet people face to face. You know, I've got multiple like Instagram friends and maker friends that I've never met face to face that I've talked to for years and never met them face to face, you know? So that's where shows really brings all this together for everybody. Now the social media has really helped find people and bring people together, which is what social media is supposed to do, minus all the BS in the background. But we won't get into that.
That's a whole nother 3 hours probably.
Yeah, for sure.
Man, so we probably should wrap up, especially for you. It's getting late. I've got one more question selfishly, because I'm probably tomorrow the next day I'll be shooting my full review on the Yeager, and something that I like to ask when I get the opportunity to talk to makers of a knife I'm in the process of reviewing: if you were to encapsulate a philosophy of use for this knife design, whether is this a box cutter, is this an outdoor knife, is it a tactical knife, is it a blend between a number of things, like you as the designer who created this knife, would you say it has a philosophy of use? Is there a vision for how you see this knife fitting into the world of categories, loosely or otherwise?
I'm going to steal what somebody else said.
Sure, that's fair.
I like what they said about it, and it makes sense, as like most of my designs are kind of geared around a blade shape. I'll start with a blade shape and then design around that.
Mm-hmm.
And some of the custom stuff's more fancy. Some of it's more aggressive than these are look wise and almost beg to be used. But this one, it's kind of like I like to see it as what Grandpa carried, even though it's nothing like what Grandpa carries. It's something that is always there. It's always going to work. It's a usable shape. And I think it was what MB Wild had said. It's like a traveling knife. Like if you're going to go on a trip, or you're going to go take an excursion or an adventure, that's the one you want to grab to take with you. It's not fancy to the point of it's a dress knife. It's not too big. It's not too small. It's kind of a good medium, which is what the M stands for, is mid-size.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not overly aggressive, because there's some blades out there, some knives out there that are just wild, and you get that and you go out in public somewhere and somebody's like, hey, you got a knife, and you whip out this, you know, Halo 5 Microtech that's got, or you know, even just the small Dirac.
Yeah,
you know, it's intimidating to some people that aren't a knife guru.
For sure.
So something like this, and it's happened to me so many times, and maybe it's because they know I've designed it or they know I'm a knife maker, but people are just like, that's in person, and people that know me and see me and see them, they're like, that's just such a cool knife. Just something that I just want to carry it and use it. And that's really what I wanted it to be. Is I don't want to say it's just the cliche EDC user, but I mean, that's really what I wanted it to be. It's something that if you just need a knife, there's that. That's what that is.
I don't think that's too cliche at all. I think that's totally fair. I think in my mind, EDC, like an everyday carry knife, is to me personally a category for knife. I have what I consider like outdoor adventure knives, which would be like the Demco 8020. This is like an outdoor adventure knife, sharp block, big 3V, beefy blade. And then there's like tactical knives, which would be, I guess this is probably a good example, like a operator SNG. This is a fighting knife basically that you put in your pocket. Like it's kind of what it's designed for. And EDC is kind of that middle ground where it's like capable. It's a knife that whether you're in an urban environment or maybe a light outdoor environment, it's going to do everything you need to do. And it probably has some self-defense capabilities. Like it's an all-arounder in the sense that it's a good knife that's usable, comfortable to carry, has good ergos. Like I think that's fair. So I like that. And
Yeah.
that's probably about where I would have put it if I were to judge it. So I like that that's where you put it as well.
Yeah. And then like going far left again with that Raptor, I want that thing as like a angry, tactical looking, scare your mama, knife, you know, something
Which is fun too.
that when you whip it out to use it, and they're not huge, but I mean, they're a little longer than the Yeager-m's, but slimmer.
Mm.
So I want people to look at that thing and be like, what is that?
Mm-hmm.
I want that. Like, that is wild looking. It's cool. It's, you know, tactical.
Yeah. Leaves an even more intense impression.
I hate that word, but I mean, that's really what I'm going for with those is just, it's a mean looking blade. It's slim handle with this massive blade that is like, how does that thing even close into there and not cut you?
Yeah.
You know, so we'll see how it plays out, but you know, the Jaeger really is just my true EDC. It really is. And I think a lot of people agree with me. And I like that. I'm glad they do, because that's kind of what I wanted to see it go to.
Yeah. I dig it. I literally when I was able to purchase this knife secondary, which I was kind of like scouring for Kevin Lefty EDC, the one who got the bit driver. He's the one who got it. And luckily, since he's a lefty, it wasn't quite as good for him.
Right.
And I already knew I really wanted one. But when Kevin got it, he was like, oh, this is Jake's like perfect knife. This is because I want a hole for deployment. It's the exact right size for me. I love a tall hollow that's thin behind the edge. I love warnies. I like my Carta. Making it an inlay is even more cool. There's like all these things that just compound to make it, for me, like what does feel like the knife I want to have in my pocket. So I tip my hat to you, sir. I think you've done an awesome job on it.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Of course, buddy. Well, as we kind of wrap this up, we've been hinting at wrapping it up for a while now. Where can people find you if they're listening? Because on YouTube, I'll put your links down below so everyone can just find you. But can you say for the people who are audio listeners where they can find you?
So Brian Brown Knives on Instagram, BRIAN, the correct way, no spaces. And then Brian Brown Knives on Facebook. It's my group. Or brianbrownknives.com will give you all the links down at the bottom. You can just go click it and find it.
Perfect.
So,
well,
thank you. Appreciate it.
Pleasure is all mine, man. I hope genuinely that we do this again another time. Maybe when the Raptor is available to show, then we'll do another one of these, and then we'll actually talk about Instagram and how crazy it's gotten.
Hopefully I can figure out how to use this webcam a little better to show off that Raptor when I get it.
I love it. We'll figure out a way. But I appreciate it, man. I genuinely had a great time doing this, and you're welcome anytime. So this has been episode number 9 of the Bearded Gear podcast, and we'll see you all on the next one.